Okay. It says we're 5 seconds into a YouTube stream. I think it's working. So, for the little bit of, what do you call it? What do you call the thing where you talk about the 70 likes? The technical aspect. The technical aspect to talk about is people are possibly, and YouTube doesn't tell me for certain, but people are making 10 YouTube accounts and they are going to log into those 10 YouTube accounts and like the video to try to get to 70 likes. And the issue with that, and the problem with that, is YouTube knows who you are and they're then deleting those. So the problem is that we'll get to 70 likes and I'll say, okay, I will plan to make a video tomorrow. And then all of a sudden we're at 62 likes. So did people manually unlike the video? Probably not. Probably YouTube's algorithm is detecting some funny business, and frankly, if you want me to be able to plan things out and prepare things in a way that you get more regular streams, instead of taking the time, here's a suggestion. If you're one of those people who possibly is liking the video from multiple accounts, recognize it's not working. And instead of taking the time to do that, you could go to a YouTube video or a Reddit post or whatever social media you use, and you could say, hey, this connects to this somehow or another. If you were going to use your time in that way, it wouldn't take any more of your time and would bring in new people. So that's the technical aspect, just a reminder. Part of the reason. There were a lot of factors why the stream is late, but we don't need to go into all of that. I will say I got some very good news today. I got a message from a friend, and he said essentially that he has been feeling miserable for a while. He's been doing his studies, and he's been feeling miserable about it. And he said, you know what, I don't care anymore what happens to my grades. I'm just going to go to the gym and I'm walking 5 miles a day. And he said something crazy to me. I'm like, it wasn't a typo because he told it to me. I was like, is this a verbal typo? What's going on? Because he said he lost 15 pounds in 10 days. Or to lose a pound of weight every day, you're basically, that's what happens when you fast, right? Essentially, when you start fasting. I don't think that he necessarily is fasting, but you know, I suppose if someone goes from a very low level, little to no exercise, and then they, you know, attack it with intensity, I don't think those kinds of changes are impossible. And I'm not offering you some kind of Jenny Craig, you know, buy my cookbook platform or listen to me, I'm a fitness guru. But I'm simply saying that, you know, things are possible that you don't think are possible. And you know, people have been asking me recently that incessant question of what's the solution, what's your solution? And if you look back in my videos, I did make some videos on my solution. I don't even know what I said in those videos because when you don't make transcriptions, of course YouTube generates those, but it's a big run-on sentence, right? So when you don't have a transcription that's clear, you know, bullet points or whatever, it's honestly hard to remember. People will bring up things. I had somebody comment, they said, hey, I know you made this video a year ago, but what are your sources? I'm like, I don't even know. What do you mean my sources? What you see is what you get. You know, it's the sources are up here. We might get into some of those tonight because, of course, we know that Twitter has up to its machinations, and so we've tried to take all of our bookmarks off there. It is a terrible platform that deletes your bookmarks. And I had, I don't know, 7,000 because I would just keep bookmarking. I don't know what the real number. It was a big number, and we didn't get to all of them. They were lost. They were deleted, unfortunately. But we tried to save as many as we could so that we can not simply consume the content, but that we can actually externalize it. And, you know, the person who was saying to me, he was saying, well, what's the solution? And I'm feeling, people use this term black belt. I don't like that. That's a dissident right term, you know. And here's the thing about the right wing is, you know, I have ears and I can hear what they say. And the idea, we have this idea of they talk about the no enemies on the right, and they talk about unite the right. They're still talking about, I mean, they're still in the same mindset that they were 5 years ago or whatever. Not much has changed really. It's just, I guess, it's become more commodified and more, it's built this celebrity culture that you have, and so there's a lot of issues there. But you can listen to somebody and you can disagree with somebody and you can still learn from somebody. And I think that kind of black and white thinking people get into, where you can't learn from somebody, you can't listen to somebody. That's part of this, what do you call it, the hyperpolarization, where you can't listen to people, you can't understand. I think people can say things which are legitimate. I think people can say things which are worth listening to. And if you have the ability to filter out the bad and take in the good, then you can listen to almost anybody. If you can do that, if you can use judgment and discernment, then you can listen to all kinds of people with all kinds of viewpoints, and that's not a problem. The issue and the problem is this branding and the tribalism that people get sucked into, where they say, well, I'm on the red team, and therefore, we just have to go along with things which are, frankly, just against common sense. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that, walking into a building and leaving that building is, in fact, not a great political accomplishment. There have been people talking about the Bolangists in Italy. At the start of the years have led this period of political turmoil, I believe in the 1970s in Italy. And, this kind of fakery and showmanship and symbolism without substance. And I mean, it is an interesting idea in itself, because, of course, when we look at the left-right dichotomy, the right tends to want things which are more concrete, whereas the left tends to be more of the English major and, more concentrated on symbol. And so it is interesting that we're seeing this event by certain people who refuse to kind of come to terms with what's happened, because I think, again, it's a problem of branding. You can't, when something has been done, you sort of have to live with it, and that's sort of an aspect of Trump's personality that he modeled for his whole constituency, is the idea that, no matter how bad, no matter how silly, you always double down. You never apologize. You never really learn from your mistakes. And that is how you exude confidence, right? You never admit failure. You never admit fault. You never admit that maybe we could have said something different. No, you sort of have this almost a religious sense of a sleepwalker type destiny, where you're going into the situation and you're just being led by God and trust the plan and that sort of thing. So it is an interesting sort of tactic. I mean, it is this almost, people talk about the magician who mystifies the nation, the shaman, and I think that is the role that Trump has played. And people have used this term, I've used this term, Schrodinger's Trump, which is to describe the superposition of Trump versus, who he is versus what he represents to people. And there's this kind of infallibility where, it's almost this Yahwehist conception of morality, where, what is good is what God does, and therefore God can do no evil, because, there's this kind of tautological definition. People started to apply this to Trump, and that's actually natural, because I think our conception of religion is something that's much like language. We have a template built into our brains that allows us to create memetic attachments to phonetics, right? So we don't know the word for dog until we're taught the word for dog, or I'm trying to think, gato is cat in Spanish. I don't even, perro, is that the word for dog? Perro and dog and hunt. So we don't know the word for dog, but we do have an inbuilt ability where we're able to attach memetics to phonetics. And I think that's the same thing with our religious ability. I think we have an inbuilt religious impulse where we say, okay, well, somebody's going to be the leader, and whoever that is has a kind of infallibility, whatever they do is right. And, some people have attached that to various representations of God. and deities, and people have obviously attached that to Trump. And it's something to think about here. It is a good time. It's actually a great time. Make a little adjustment here. And that superposition is interesting because it's really come to fruition with these latest two tapes that have come out, and we've seen them. And of course, again, the right wing has gone into this type of what I would almost call a justified paranoia, because we're in an age of deepfakes, and I have never seen a deepfake of Trump being promoted as real by the mainstream media. I've never seen that. But it is interesting to think that we as a civilization have the technology to deepfake, Trump having a conversation with Putin where he says, "Oh, thank you, Putin, for all the money, and thank you for not releasing those unfortunate tapes of me in Moscow." And Putin says, "Oh, of course, Trump, I would never release those tapes as long as you're a good boy and you help the Russian state and the KGB." So we're at a point now where something like that could be produced, and the content might be ridiculous, but the visuals, the audio would be indistinguishable from reality. That's a disturbing place to be in. And it kind of reminds me of the nuclear arms race. Again, it's this concept of superposition, where you're in a state of constant paranoia where the nukes could go off at any moment. Well, at any moment, if an actor was sufficiently sophisticated enough, we could see a deepfake that was indistinguishable from reality, that was touted as the real thing. I mean, who's to say at this point that any video that we have, and again, this gets into a deep, deep form of paranoia, bordering on a kind of like existentialism or philosophical questioning and an epistemological nihilism or solipsism, where we start to ask, is anything on the internet real? Is any of this genuine? Am I genuine here? Am I a real person? We're looking now at the facial generation, that these companies come and they generate faces. And it's so sophisticated that we can't distinguish between the photo of a real living person and a person who has been artificially generated by an artificial intelligence. It's getting so sophisticated now that, we're seeing the technology becoming cheaper and cheaper and better, and it really makes one fear for the future, because at least with nuclear bombs, the bombs go off and they destroy cities, but the nuclear winter comes and people die, but it's still real, it's still something that is in a sense tangible. It is something that is concrete. It is something that we can understand. But what's happening now is it's this whole veil of illusion descending upon us, and it's almost like being buried in an avalanche where we don't know what the future will hold. I mean, certainly someone at some time is going to want to use this technology, and the question of whether or not they're successful doesn't have to do with chance or probability. At this point, it almost seems certain that eventually this type of technology will be used, and the question that's even scarier is, has it already been used? We think of things like human-animal hybrids, where people discuss the possibility of gene splicing and inserting genes and this sort of thing, where you're talking about chimeras, you're talking about this sort of thing that you would see in a Full Metal Alchemist anime, where you're looking at the what do they call it? The homunculus. I forget how you say it. It's an odd word. Don't worry about that one. But the homunculi, these half animal, half human things, and we understand this on a deep level. The Frankenstein's monster. And it's something that we've seen in media, and it's something you could even say stretching back quite far, medieval times, and there are all these Egyptian representations of the human-animal hybrids, and it makes one wonder. It makes one wonder the directionality of our imagination, in relation to technology, as Heidegger talks about technics, which is the driving force or will. Giorgiani calls it Promethean, or Faustian, which generates the technology. And we could look at it in the bookmarks today, but the old medieval cities with their towers, the very tall towers, the spires, and it's something that makes you wonder about the way that we think about skyscrapers as this marker of modernism in the 20th century. But is it really so new? Is it really anything different from the Tower of Babel? Is any of this, are any of the concepts any of the technological concepts, at some point you're looking at Frank Herbert in the Dune universe, and you're looking at this conflation of technology and magic, and you're asking yourself at what point, the chicken and the egg, what came first? Is it ancient technology? Some people believe things like, well, ancient aliens built the pyramids, or there were ancient technologies, and that's why we believe in dragons, because dragons really were real. We have memories of dinosaurs, and I actually do believe that. I believe that our ancestral memories are very deep, and this is, I think it's shown in a number of places in animal studies, and that you can show that an animal will retain ancestral memories for a very long time. And I think we do have memories of dinosaurs ranging back from before we were human beings. I think we have memories of when we were much smaller and in a much different mammalian state, and we remember being hunted by lizards and snakes and these sort of things, and that's why this is such a distinct fear for us. In the same way we have a fear of heights, we have a fear of reptiles and snakes and reptile people, because it is deeply ingrained in us. It was part of our survival strategies, part of our blood memory and our genetic memory. So I believe in that sort of thing, and it becomes questionable. I tend to be more of the opinion that all of the technology we have is a representation of our will, that all the tech, and it's, I think that's, the Schopenhauerian take, which is, all the things that we have now are expressions of things that we wanted and we imagined, rather than viewing in a more Marxist sense, viewing that all of our ideas are products of material conditions, all of our ideas are, the result of some kind of alien contact. You'd have to ask then, where did the aliens get their technology, right? So at some point, the idea has to be primary over the material thing, in an ultimate sense. So we were talking about a lot of things here. We're talking about a lot of interesting things. I will try to quickly check in on the comments, and then we will go into perhaps some. Neuroposter is here. I've acknowledged you. You've been formally acknowledged, Neuroposter. Let's see, Jokkull. Very, very nice name, Jokkull. Yes, we need to bioengineer Uber Jokkull viewers to circumvent Susan's EMP technology. Or, yeah, you could just, tell people. Get to watch favorite e-boy. Are you one of those people leaving 10 likes? Nope. Lose 10 pounds in 10 days? Esoteric. Kenneth has the same kind of skin as that Kato guy. I feel vaguely insulted. Are you a leftist? Yes, I am a leftist. He's a reptilian. Ken looks a lot more Mediterranean. It saddens me to say that Yoba is coming to an end. How would you know? Are we headed toward a period of woke fascism? 20,000 troops in D.C. for virtual inauguration checkpoints. Yeah, that term fascism is a complicated term. So there's two ways we can look at fascism. One is as the totalization of corporations and the state, so that the separation between the private and the public becomes abolished, and it's really a type of political theocracy. And in that sense, I think we are moving toward that. But in another sense, you can view it from a tripartite class analysis, and then that sort of term becomes very misused, I would say. I can neither confirm nor deny whether or not I liked the last stream on 27 accounts. Biden is dead. I can't. Well, that's not true. I can't say that. Militarism isn't innately fascist. I would vaguely agree with that. Read Victor Pelevin. Okay, I don't know who that is. maybe we could do a little Godward podcast is telling me. Read Victor Pelevin, a Russian fiction writer, the author of novels such as Oman Ra, in Generation P, esoteric philosophies, pop culture. Is he one of these Russians who's promoting all kinds of weird stuff? You know, sort of the Russian Atlanteans. The Russians are very into this kind of thing. Oman Ra, I'm looking at a picture of a man with the head of a pigeon. Okay. Space exploration. Well, that's interesting. Biden should be deified. Okay. People can make deepfakes at home. That's very true. Watch a YouTube video about Pelevin. Are you a mod, Godward Podcast? Now you're a mod. Rip White America. Interesting. That's an interesting sentiment. We might talk about that. Remember that governments are 30 plus years ahead of public tech. That is probably true. You make catgirls sound like a bad thing. Bologna's towers. I, for one, welcome our deepfake chimera catgirl overlords. All right. Star Wars literally happened in a galaxy far away and long ago. Imagine, well, in a big enough universe, on a big enough time scale, that might be true. Or multiverse. Imagine believing in dinosaurs. I do believe in dinosaurs. Lord of the Rings isn't LARP, it's part of our gene memory. Probably. Hello, Stas. Back, what are you talking about, Neuroposter? Please keep it family friendly in the comments. Ian is back. I don't even know who Ian is, but he's a moderator, so I don't remember when I made that happen. Everyone needs to get on TRT. Reuter Nation. I'm liberal. Deep Roids Trembolone Experience. Is that the new thing? Oh my goodness. Neuroposter is just, he's too much for me. I'm curious how the system thinks it will get away with firing and canceling half the U.S. population. Well, that's not going to happen, first of all. Second of all, one of the bookmarks was the fact that I believe it was Solzhenitsyn was talking about how like 25% of the citizens of Leningrad were arrested on a single night. Nothing happened, right? So, yeah, that's how they get away with it. Pelevin is a postmodernist into ancient Babylonian. He likes ideas like every president since Reagan has been a hologram. Yeah, it is spooky stuff. Very spooky, very ghostly. No, you know, Neuroposter, I'm going to ban you. You are not exempt from bans here. I will not have people bringing this kind of priapism into my live chat. I just won't allow it. I will ban you. This is a big ban territory. Deep tissue massage experience. Very good. Biden will step down. The inaugural speech will be delivered by hologram George Floyd. That's possible. You shouldn't use test unless you have to, because once you start supplementing, your body stops producing it. There are 80 million fire Trumpers. What are 80 million fire Trumpers going to do after they're canceled from society? Well, 50% of the so-called Trumpers are not on board with, well, how do I say this? They're not going to fire 80 million people. I mean, we can get into the technicalities, but you're just saying things that are not true. And I think what we're looking at here is the Tea Party movement. If you remember, the Tea Party movement was this big, powerful movement, and now it is not, right? It's still around in one form or another, but it's not the way it used to be, and I think that's what's going to happen with Trump. I think it will deflate. Thank you, Ian, for helping out. I don't know that post was the most offensive. Will there ever be a Kenneth and Neuroposter stream? That's well, it's not entirely up to Neuroposter because the scheduling is an issue, but if Neuroposter invites me on, then I'm willing to do that. What you don't remember, have you even read John Locke? It was a while ago, man, and people changed their usernames, so I don't remember Ian. you might have changed your username. I want to do a regular podcast with Kenneth. Well, it's possible. It's possible if we put in the effort. I've heard you say things like that in the past. I've heard those sentiments, but I haven't heard actual, like, hey man, this is my schedule, let's make it work. Kind of technical brass tacks. If I get banned, I remember I made Kenneth a mod on my streams. The private sector developed the microprocessor before the military. Okay, bro. Okay, bro. Computers were invented by the Germans in 1940s, so don't even talk to me about these weird little technicalities of history. I grant the military is probably more efficient at integrating technology for the use of force and surveillance. I'm not sure what I'm afraid of. Pain, ostracism, death, letting my children down. Well, those are all, I think, very powerful fears. And the way to fix your fear of pain is to, I don't recommend people self-harm, but, you got to do something. You got to do things which are painful. Like, you just have to have a confrontation. This is what the book club says, and I agree. You have to have a confrontation with pain. You have to confront it in a way that I find some of the greatest laughter I have is in confronting pain and painful things, as opposed to the Seinfeld chuckle where, oh, it's a little ironic joke, it's a little inside joke. The pain, the laughter that you get from pain sometimes it's very cathartic, it's very relieving. As far as ostracism, I don't believe in this type of deliberate ostracism where you ostracize yourself out of the fear of ostracism. I think that's what people do. I think they say, well, I'm not going to be accepted by society, so I'm going to ostracize myself. I don't agree with that. And, of course, the fear of death, I mean, it's a common thing. We have to deal with it in different ways. I think definitely investing in our children, in our next generation is important. And also to have a confrontation with the concept of the self. I think that's where our fear of death often comes from. And living in this kind of concept that there has to be a solution to death. There is no solution to death. We have to figure out how to live, not how to avoid death. I just rocked up in my natural state and I'm being discriminated. Yes, we do discriminate against Australians. The Tea Party people weren't called the domestic T word. That's very true, Greg. I agree with you there. But you have to realize that a lot of this is, I believe that, okay, so there's two theories. There's like, people talk about boiling the frog, and they say, well, you can boil the frog and that will work, but if you go too fast and you go too hard, then these people are going to have an uprising. And I hear people say that, and I say, well, let's look at history and let's look at historical examples of governments that do things like they call their citizens kulaks, and they say, we're going to kill all the kulaks. What happens with those kulaks? Do the kulaks have an uprising, or do the kulaks mostly just get, and a lot of kulaks, by the way, survived in one way or another. A lot of kulaks were not all killed. A lot of kulaks sort of kept their heads down and denounced their fellow kulaks. And, so when we talk about the percentage, 80 million, I think, is too much. I think you're talking about almost a fourth of the country or something. I don't think they're going to go after a fourth of the country. I think they're going to cow people, and I think already Trump is going along with it. Frankly, you look at what Trump is doing with his denunciations of his own people and his own people that he incited. And we all know what he did, and it was very cowardly, and I thought it was shameful. And it was actually it was greatly disgusting to me, and it was actually exhausting. I could feel sort of energy being drained out of me after this 5-year-long drama with Trump, where, it's finally come to this where he is the one using the T word, not just the Democrats, not Biden, not these people, but it's Trump is using those kinds of words and that kind of language. And, he might not have used that specific word, but he's getting very close. And, so when Trump is doing it, it's a controlled demolition of the Trump movement. It's another 9/11. and it's very disheartening if you're in a point where your branding doesn't allow you to see this for what it is. It's a very tough situation to be in, and I feel bad because there are many people who are very talented, very intelligent, very disciplined, and I think we need all those attributes, and I think all of that's admirable. But they're stuck in a branding where they have to stand with Trump when Trump won't stand with them. It's a very tough position to be in. I don't envy that position right now. But those people, I mean, people who have a kind of indomitable spirit, who they simply do not allow themselves to be defeated, they will continue on. I mean, they will not. I do not believe things are all of the projections people are making about. I think there are things where people are too optimistic. I think the idea that entering a building and leaving the building, I think the idea that that was a political type of victory or accomplishment or achievement, I think that's sort of ridiculous. I think that's unwarranted optimism. But I also think that besides that fact, right, besides the fact that they're overly optimistic, I think they're overly pessimistic in the idea that everyone's going to be thrown in jail, or that sort of the government will take direct action. Certainly against people who committed crimes on live streams will probably go to jail. But, and I'm sorry that's the case, but 80 million people are not going to jail. 80 million people are not losing their jobs. By the way, you want to talk about millions of people losing their jobs? Look at what's happened with this whole thing happening here. By the way, this is something I'm going to throw away. This is a piece of trash because I found this today, and I can't rip. I'm not strong enough. I don't have the grip strength. This is too hardy, and that's part of the problem. The fact that well, I can rip off the little string. I'll rip off the string because I found this on the street today. And I'm very upset about this, by the way. I'm very upset that people who call themselves leftists are going along with this little, what is this, a tampon? What is this? People are putting tampons in their faces, and they're saying, well, we have to save grandma and grandpa. And people telling me, oh, well, I can't even get into the details, and we all understand. I won't get into the details, but what I will say is there are no amount of human lives worth saving over the destruction and the pollution of our planet, because we can always have more children, but if our planet is polluted, then our children will be poisoned, and we cannot poison our children. This is a pollutant. This is a canola oil tampon, and it's microplastics, and you're huffing microplastics, and you're putting microplastics. I will never do this. I will never pollute. When I was a young child, I strongly believed that if we should use the death penalty, and this was, I suppose, you say this is a little bit overboard. Perhaps I can't say this today, but I would say we should use the maximum punishment allowed by law against people who litter, against people who pollute, against people who destroy nature. And you know what? These people pushing this, they are destroying nature, they're polluting the earth. And yes, I will say that. I will go on record. I will say that there's no amount of human life, I believe, that is worth more than our planet and our habitat and our homeland. This whole planet, this earth, is our homeland. We live here, and we're not the billionaire class. We can't live in a bubble, and we can't spend millions of dollars on treatments to negate or mitigate the effects of the poisoning that they've pushed on the entire planet with their corporations. It's disgusting. This is disgusting to me. It was infuriating to me to see this happening everywhere. You see them like tumbleweeds on the street, that people are pushing these microplastics on us, this vast ocean, a sea of filth and pollution. And I don't want it anymore, and I'm done with it. I'm done with this sort of thing. I picked it up today, and I will throw it away, and it will go into a landfill, right? It will go into a landfill. At least it won't be on the streets, but you can't burn these things either. They just go into the atmosphere, and we should not be doing this. We should not have this plastic economy. People talk about the fossil fuels. That's not even the worst one, the fossil fuels. I mean, things like clean coal and the way that they're able to burn these to make energy. That's not even the problem. The problem is when we harden the fossil fuels, we make them into plastics, and they become microplastics, and they're destroying our environment. They're disrupting our endocrine system. They're causing mental health problems. They're causing so many of these issues. So we have to stand against it. We cannot be complicit in this. We can't be promoting this sort of thing anymore. Now, as far as I'm trying to figure out what people are saying here, they're talking to each other. I hope all right-wingers get canceled from society so we'll be forced to start our own. I actually, that's not a wish of mine. I'm not interested in having, I'm interested in having pornography canceled. I'm interested in having plastic canceled. I'm interested in seeing the billionaire class get canceled. I'm not really interested in people were silly, they were foolish, they were incorrect, and that the idea that canceling people is going to cause them to do something good. I think censorship is effective. I don't think, again, that's I think an unfounded optimism that the idea that canceling people will make them stronger and better. I don't think that's true. I think if a person is strong, they will take a bad situation, they'll make the best out of it. But I don't think that canceling people actually is going to make them stronger. I think we're going to see some bad things happening with that. I mean, we're already seeing it, right? It's been in the works for 5 years now. You already see big blue check marks saying that 1/6 was worse than 9/11. They didn't say that about the Tea Party. That's very true, Greg. So I agree that the rhetoric is heating up, and we're reaching sort of medieval. I mean, this has happened in history before. We know the types of terrible things that people have said about each other, and we know that we're getting to that point. We know that this country was founded by people who were willing to duel to the death over honor. But we've now reached a point where that doesn't mean much, and now it's dueling to the death over ideology. And it reminds me much of the investiture contest and during the French Revolution, the kind of pornographic libel that would be issued against Marie Antoinette, and they would call her all sorts of things. They would use all sorts of slurs and promote all kinds of possibly slanderous stories about her. And we're seeing that sort of thing return and come to a head. And, certainly this is different from the Tea Party in the respect that it's being attacked more vociferously. But in terms of its ability to last and maintain and withstand the canceling, I'm not looking at that as a what do you call that? I don't think it's a realistic projection to say that just because 1/6 is being taken more seriously than 9/11 doesn't mean that 1/6 was an accomplishment. In the same way, I don't think 9/11 was an accomplishment. I don't think 9/11 made the world a better place. My schedule is Monday nothing, Tuesday nothing. Okay, well, we're going to have to get give me a day. What do you want to do? You want to do it tomorrow, January 17th? What time? What's the Australian time? Give me the time. Fear of humiliation, give up everything and follow me. Fear of humiliation is pretty big. Everyone get on Wes Watson. I don't know who Wes Watson is. Escape your mental prison. Wes Watson. Okay, he's a prison bodybuilder or something like that. Okay. Alrighty. Neuro loiterer. The fear of getting banned from Kenneth Stream. You can always make a new account. I hope all right-wingers get ostracized so we can improve society. Yeah, I actually don't believe in the ostracization of, working-class misinformed people. Those people are not the problem. The people who, by the way, entered a building and they left the building, I don't think those people are the problem with our society. I think the people who are the problem are the billionaire class. What if self-ostracization is the natural consequence of genetic preference giving genetic dissimilarity with the rest of the population? Well, ostracization is different from a minoritarian strategy. Self-ostracization is not the term that we should use. It's not a technical or proper term. That's why we need to balkanize. I hate that term. You should know that I hate the term balkanization because it's not at all applicable to the United States of America, and anyone who thinks it is doesn't know about the Balkans. I have people talking about Balkan, and they're like, I'm from the Balkans. I'm from Greece, and America's balkanizing. You don't know what balkanization is. You don't know your own history. Genetic dissimilarity is not being an inbred domestic terrorist graper insurgent. Yeah, that's actually interesting. We might listen to what Rudy Giuliani has to say about that later. um, after the first hour here if I get through all these chats. Rudy Giuliani will never not be funny. Anger is the punishment you give yourself for somebody else's mistakes. Prison sentences aren't going to stop. If Kenneth and I did a podcast, it would be him getting... Okay, what are we... Yeah, I guess it would. It would be Neuroposter just trying to make me as uncomfortable as possible. I would be over here. I would be stately. I would be poised. I would be sort of aloof. I would be sort of aloof up here, and he would be like, "G'day, mate. G'day, mate." And he would just be very vulgar and rude, as is his style. See, my style, I have a very professional style. I have a very distinguished style. That's part of my brand. And Neuroposter, his style and his brand is, how can I make those types of people uncomfortable? He is truly, I talk about the bureaucrats, but I guess he's a kind of anti-bureaucrat extremist compared to me. I mean, when you compare me and Neuroposter, I mean, standing side by side, I look like a legal clerk. I look like some kind of, guy giving you a parking ticket. And he's the one doing the oil juking. I mean, you compare me, there's like a hierarchy of this. I might be doing some juking, but his juking is on another level. He's juking from me while I'm juking from the other people. So it's kind of like you're letting the cats out of the bag, except the cats are naked, hairless, covered in olive oil. YouTube sent Pod Awful to actual jail a year ago. I don't know who Pod Awful is. Yoba ism. Okay, whatever. People like Hannity hyped the stolen election. Then his viewers come to the internally consistent conclusion that if it's stolen and there is no legal recourse to occupy the Capitol, then Hannity condemns them. Yep, it's the same with all these people. It's actually very sad. I don't blame any of these people. They were misled. They were told that 1776 will rise again. Alex was doing interviews with General Flynn, and then he says ridiculous things. I mean, it's very disgusting, everything that's happening, and I don't blame the people who are the followers. What I hope is that maybe some of them will wake up. Unfortunately, I don't have the resources to do that by myself. Unfortunately, many of them will live the rest of their lives believing that, President Trump was the greatest since Ronald Reagan. And it's very sad because a lot of them will experience a lot of hardship that's completely unnecessary, a lot of suffering. And I don't want that to happen, but I know it's not in my power to change that. But yeah, you do have to press S to spit on Sean Hannity, spit on, frankly, we have to do a little spitting on Trump. We have to spit on some of these people. We have to disrespect them. We cannot, I hear people saying, yes, well, Trump is actually all these bad things, but we have to keep the myth of Trump alive. We have to keep the myth of Trump alive on what grounds, by what standard, by what logic? And really, the truth of it is we have to keep the myth of Trump alive to justify the fact that we supported him for so many years with sort of unmitigated optimism and this kind of hyperbolic, hypocritical, nonsensical 4D chess, trust the plan sort of thing. And certain people saw it coming, and certain people saw it coming in 2016, frankly. And, I guess you can be smug about that. And a lot of people talk about the sniping from the sidelines. And it is true that, Trump was part of a bigger cultural wave that he latched onto and other people latched onto that created very large audiences and a lot of money. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about $1 billion. And we're talking about a huge political economy. We're talking about, live streamers, making six-figure salaries off of this Trump movement. So it's a big thing. And if anything positive has come out of it, great. And as I've said before, I use this term mythical patricide, not a literal physical patricide, but patricide in the sense of, we all have held incorrect positions in the past. And you could say that, maybe someone like a Peterson or someone like a Trump or someone like one of these figures could have drawn you to this point, and now you've moved beyond them. But we can't continue to respect people who were wrong simply because they were part of our intellectual development. We need to have some patricide. It doesn't mean that we have a total iconoclasm, and maybe some people do. Maybe some people want to be the new Zoroastrians, and I think that's what many people on the religion of racial resentment, they do want to destroy everything, and they are being very Zoroastrian. But they're over there doing that, and I don't believe in that. I don't believe that we have to condemn all of our history in toto, but I think that people need to start feeling comfortable not holding up some of these people as these sacred cows, these sacred totems. It was a ride that lasted about 5 years, and it will continue to last in one form or another, but I think that the support for Trump and MAGA is going to evaporate in the same way that the Tea Party evaporated. I think the persecution of Trump and MAGA will continue for years to come. That's the distinction. Baby boy, what's up? Yeah, I don't know. How do you rip this? Okay, there I did. It's just about technique, all right? Are you happy now? Are you happy? I tried to do a little paper. I thought it was going to be like paper. But there's like a metal or plastic wire in here where I thought you could just, you can rip it on the side. Okay, there you go. I was like, it started to give me a little, because have you ever had Canadian money, like the plastic money where, and boy, does this thing is terrible. Look at this little piece of plastic in here. This is terrible. It's like a twist tie, essentially. But Canadian money, it's very hard to rip Canadian money and plastic money. Americans don't necessarily get the reference, but I thought it was sort of like that. I thought it was kind of this plastic mesh that I didn't know my own strength, I suppose. It's a metaphor. First, I humiliated myself on live stream by not being able to rip a piece of trash, and then Neuroposter came and he bullied me into a great feat of strength. Baked was legally obliged not to leave Arizona. He went and stormed the Capitol. Yeah, I can't say I support that. But I also don't support any of the actions being taken against these people. These people are not the problem with our country. I know a lot of people on the left want to blame the people who went into the building and left the building. I know a lot of these, I call them blue patriots. They are blue patriots. They are theocrats. You look at someone like Meghan McCain, and they absolutely want to destroy these people. These people aren't the problem with our country. They didn't do anything wrong. They simply followed what they were told to do, and the problem is with the leadership, not the followers. These people are completely capable of being good citizens, and I don't have a problem with any of them. I have a problem with the fact that they've been lied to and they've been deceived. And I think we can't support that deception anymore. We have to hold people morally accountable. We cannot give them moral support. One of the live streams, how angry are you? What is your neuroticism percentile? Probably very high, but it depends on the mood, When I exercise, my neuroticism drops down to like 0. And if I don't for a while, there are various things that will make me more neurotic. The internet makes me neurotic. What else makes me neurotic? Being hungry. I'm trying to think of things that make me neurotic. Probably things of that nature. I willingly take the poison and oh my goodness. Mark is sometimes I need a break, man. Sometimes I need a break. Sometimes I just need a break. Cool it with the right-wing extremism. There's no right-wing extremism to be found here. Weren't we supposed to run out of fossil fuels 10 years ago? Greta Thunberg moment. My wife says she likes your canola oil tampon. Peak oil, not exhausting oil. Losing your legs makes you stronger. Pain is weakness leaving the body. The competing society thing is the political solution. Of all organizations on the ground, like dissident right movements, its endgame is violence and civil war. Do you bring up prawn every stream? Possibly. I mean, it's a pretty big thing, right? It's like one of the biggest, I would say it's one of the biggest religious rituals that we engage in as a society. Widespread canceling has begun to make the right wing more anti-fragile. I got to scroll up a little bit. Oh my goodness. Widespread canceling has begun to make the right more anti-fragile. People are using Russian domain servers, DDoS, protection on social media, forming financial organizations. I mean, here's what I'll say. When there's a bad situation, some people make the best of it. That doesn't mean you're better off being forced into that situation. That's like it's a very weird kind of optimism. I'm trying not to get canceled. It's hard, but I'm trying because I don't think that, oh, I'm just going to like get canceled on purpose and then that's going to be better. Like, I mean, that's my position. Obviously, everyone's has a different viewpoint on it, but I think in general, you know, you try to interact with. I look at the Soviet Union and I look at the people who I admire in the Soviet Union were not the people who are dissidents. I admire the people who worked in the system to make it a better system. I admire the Russian generals who genuinely tried to make the Soviet Union a better place to live in and a less miserable place to live in. So honestly, I admire the people who tried to work with the system, work within the system more than the people who, you know, frankly, Solzhenitsyn, I mean, what did he do at the end of the day? He promoted, you know, America. He was basically an American agent, whether he knew it or not. That was his function. And I don't think he did anything great. I don't think the collapse of the Soviet Union was a good thing, and I don't think it was a populist thing, and I don't think, you know, it's a grave mistake to imagine that, you know, America is going to go the way of the Soviet Union. Have you seen people saying that 40 million Americans should die? That sounds weird. I don't want to be associated with that. Eating raw onions. Are people actually calling it 1/6? That's wild. Yep, they are. Small-scale canceling doesn't do that. Once the threshold is reached, the incentive for people to start migrating increases. Well, now you draw a comparison between that and white flight, right? Is it a good thing that we make our urban centers into, you know, hellholes and frankly, just depressing? I mean, you look at the inner city ghetto, you know, that's not, it's not a happy, vibrant place. It's a depressing place where it's not even exciting violence. I mean, the gangster rap music industry has attempted to, in a sense, culturally gentrify and apply the mythos of the Wild West to the inner city. And maybe there's some truth to that, but to a large degree, it's like the violence is like, you know, people, you know, beating their kids with pots and pans and people using drugs and, you know, people who can't read and people, I mean, like, it's just depressing. It's not even, it's not like some kind of, you know, Wild West. And so when you create those kinds of situations and then people engage in what's called white flight, and it's not even, you know, I'm not a big racialist or anything like that, but that's the term people use. And I think it's more to do with, you say the intersection of class and race, and we could get into the specifics, but I will use that term just to show that, you know, when there's a problem and people respond to the problem, that doesn't mean that the problem was good, right? You know, so Keynes' broken window fallacy. Let's break a window to stimulate economic activity. It's like, you know, the whole canceling that's going on today, I just view it as a religious transformation. Instead of canceling blasphemy against Jesus, now we cancel blasphemy of other kinds. Let's do a call, discuss this plan, maybe quickly after the stream. That's certainly possible. I think I DM'd you on the account I use more frequently, and then that can be worked out. Neuroposting to neurohosting. Using Telegram makes your niche cult anti-fragile. Neurojousting. What about voluntary balkanization succession? That's, first of all, it's secession. Now, I don't mean to be pedantic with you, sir, but if you can't spell the term secession, then you probably don't understand the historical context that makes secession possible versus succession would be like the prince succeeded the king, his predecessor. So I'm pointing that out not to be a jerk. I'm pointing it out to say the whole thing is terribly wrong-headed. It is a desperate branding. It is a solution to a problem of branding. It's not a solution to a political problem. It's a solution to an entertainment problem. People have audiences of right-wingers, and they understand that their narrative of the world is very wrong. And they understand that there's a huge amount of cognitive dissonance when you pump Trump up as the savior, and then he turns out to be what he is. And then you say, well, I guess it's time for secession. I guess it's time to balkanize the country. Well, what you've done is you've covered up a previous lie with a new lie to keep milking the audience. And the question is, well, what are they milking the audience for? They could make more money elsewhere. That's true. They don't care so much about money. These people are mostly narcissists. And I say that not from the outside. I say that as somebody making a YouTube live stream to you right now, somebody who is not doing this for money. I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm doing this for many reasons because I like the attention. So I understand the psychology of these people who say, oh, I'm not doing it for the money. I could make more money elsewhere. That's true. I could also make more money by not doing this live stream, doing something else instead with my time. But my primary motivating factor in my life is not money. It's necessary, right? We need to have food and shelter and whatever in order to have a certain status. Although it's interesting, I would suggest if you're young, trying to be homeless is not the worst idea. You can actually save a lot of money that way. And it's a very interesting thing to do. But in any case, these people want attention, and so they promote narratives that are fundamentally flawed in order to continue to keep their branding going, because otherwise they get exposed as, wow, I was wrong. I don't know what to do next. Maybe you shouldn't listen to me because I don't know what I was talking about. Maybe you should listen to somebody else. That's the point you would get at if these people were honest. My GF says she likes my masculine physique and says you're kind of cool too. See, I know some of these people actually do have like wives and girlfriends. I'm actually not certain about you, Mark. I'm not 100%. Is your girlfriend real or is she just a deep fake? People watching my stream with their girlfriends, what are you doing? What are you doing, man? I could never imagine doing that. Totally bizarre. Can't relate. I don't claim to be one of them, nor is it Telegram I'm talking about. What did Rudy say? Oh, Rudy Giuliani. Well, we'll find out. Important question. I made chicken and vegetable soup for dinner. Would you like some? Absolutely. That sounds so good right now. I actually had a sandwich. It was some nice thick bread with some bacon, fried chicken, pickles, and a bit of like mayonnaise sauce. Now, I don't put that on there. It's a pre-bought sandwich. Something about like I could go out and buy the ingredients and make the sandwich myself, but it's one of those like millennial. It's like I could do it, but for some reason it tastes better when somebody else makes it for me. I guess that's like, I need somebody else to make me the sandwich. I don't know. It's something psychological. It just tastes better. So I had that before the stream, and I'm still very hungry because I haven't eaten my daily 3,000 calories. I'm very hungry right now, but that's okay. We'll have a snack later. Do people down there say fair dinkum? A distinguished lie on the floor style. Hey, It's a very complicated type of distinction. Neuroposter, he's just brash. He's like a bull in a china shop. I am not so aggressive in my what do you call that? Performative masculine bullying. I don't know what you call it. Juking. Ken regularly goes out in his birthday suit all smeared with oil and jukes through shopping malls. That's the dream. Oh no, sunk cost fallacy. Yep, that's correct. You have to keep the myth of Trump alive on the basis of mythology. That's what mythology is about. No, that's actually not what mythology is about. Mythology is not about taking somebody who is fundamentally like a part of the mainstream mythology and then making him into something else. We had an interesting drop in viewers from in the past 2 minutes. It went from 41 viewers to 24. Maybe there was an internet outage of some kind. Big Floyd is a greater mythological figure than Trump. That's a fact. In some ways, I guess he's a more coherent figure than Trump. I do think Trump changed American politics permanently. I suppose there's a sense in which you could say that's true, in the same way that the Tea Party changed politics permanently, but in the same way that Ronald Reagan changed politics permanently. But you could say that about literally any president. This president changed politics permanently. Yes, in some small way, some little grain of sand way, but we're not talking about, don't speak in absolutes with me. You're obscuring the issue, which is that the power of Trump is not what people think it is. He might be a billionaire. He is the first true outsider to become. No, he's not a true outsider. Look at the people he surrounds himself without any prior political or military background. I mean, his closest advisors, all the people are all part of the system, right? None of his closest advisors were outsiders. He was a figurehead for them. And that kind of superficial analysis is what got us here in the first place. We have plastic money. First president since Carter not to start new wars. Okay. Maybe America needed a break from wars. And maybe they just wanted to focus on the wars they were already engaged in, you know? I mean, that is something, right? And it's an interesting point. It's probably the most significant part. But you actually look at the geopolitical reorientation, and I think it's a kind of good cop, bad cop. I think Obama was sort of Obama did that, right? George Bush was the bad cop. George Bush goes and says, we're going to have wars with everyone. And then Obama's the good cop. Oh, we're going to stop the wars. But then Obama becomes the bad cop. And then he has his red line. And then he's the good cop. And he doesn't go in. And then he's the bad cop. And he goes into Libya. Then he's the good cop. And he wants to do a deal with Iran. And so it goes back and forth like that. And you look at Trump. And Trump was basically a very good cop. And the result was, Sudan and the United Arab Emirates and all these countries are forming relations with Israel that were previously underground. Now they're above ground. And so, is it really a distinct break with previous American geostrategic principles? I don't think so. He didn't actually disband NATO. So a lot of the things I don't think were as dramatic as people think they are. I think a break in an aggressive policy of war making is different from actually charting a new course. I think he basically just hit the pause button, and he didn't actually put forth a new vision of American primacy and geostrategic imperative. And I don't know that he could have done such a thing, but I don't think he really attempted to. Tried to rip up foreign currency to pieces. True patriot. Yes, very patriotic. Let's see. Trump was this outsider. Everyone was against him. He won that one time. What did he do? Nothing. This proves that being an outsider is not a functional strategy. Very true. Yeah, I would prefer to be the insider who gets things done than the outsider who's the quote-unquote dissident. He didn't start a war. He ruined the whole country. XXO, boom. All right, I got to scroll up here. I got to scroll up in the chat. Speaking of being hungry, how good is your resting metabolic rate if you don't exercise? Do you gain weight? Depends on how much you eat. Thoughts? Or me personally, I lose weight because I don't eat unless I tell myself you are a skinny twink and you need to eat food, then I just naturally lose weight. I naturally get very skinny. You look at my videos about, well, back in like June, July, you can see my face is getting gaunt. Now I have my nice chubby cheeks back, but I was pretty gaunt there. Thoughts on the vaccine? I think anti-vax controlled opposition. I'm not completely sure. I have no thoughts on issues like that. He discredited the political class. He discredited himself as a brand, the Republican Party, all the policies he ran on. Yeah, I cannot speak on that issue, but I will say, why am I defending people who are on the right wing? Because I don't think they're at fault, and I think resenting working class people who have been fooled by Trump is not something I'm interested in. I'm not interested in giving attention to that. I mean, that's what the Blue Patriot does. The Blue Patriot is someone who looks at, the average Trump voter and says, we should kill them all, and all this things that I would never say. That's very, it's very offensive to me, that kind of resentment. I don't believe in that sort of thing. I believe that if anyone should be punished by the law, it should be people who actually have agency, who are powerful, who are responsible, the billionaire class, not mom and pop who got sucked into lies. I don't blame them for being deceived. I don't think everyone, even I have been deceived at times. You can look back in my videos and when I was wearing gloves and things like that, I was deceived, and so I'm not infallible, and I don't hate myself for being deceived, and I don't hate other people for being deceived. And I think actually, if you do hate people simply for being deceived, then that's a big moral problem. I admire the Soviet economists and computer specialists who tried to use computing to make the planned economy function better due to computational constraints. It was not possible in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, very interesting point. There are proles without political agency. It's not their fault, but at some point they become a greater liability. Well, I'm not saying that, I'm a populist where whatever's popular, we have to, if mom and pop believe that Trump is the savior, therefore, out of respect to mom and pop, do we need to, pretend to agree with them? That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that I don't resent them, I don't hate them, they're not the problem, and I don't want to treat them like the kulaks were treated. And I don't think anything good will come out of that. I'm not happy to see people go to jail because they were fooled and they were lied to. I'm not happy about that. And I think when people are happy about that, it's an expression of some pretty sick resentment. I figured it out. If you type in all caps, Ken can't read this. He won't say it, and he won't ban you. Oh, interesting theory. I admire something even more esoteric. The collapse of the Soviet Union was a disaster for the West. Not true. It allowed CEOs to abandon their responsibility to workers. It undid any incentive for young Western men to be bold and assertive. Okay, well, in that sense, there's an aspect of truth. I guess it depends on who you mean by the West. You mean the mom and pop living in the West, or you mean the CEOs? Because when you say the West, I think about the CEOs first, not the mom and pop. Quickly, post your credit card number and security code. Kidding. Alt F. Not gonna. You can't trick me, Ziv. Why aren't you a racialist? Okay. Who controls power? A lot of people will tell you it's Jews. I have a problem with that if you also call yourself a racialist, because there are plenty of blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jews. The idea that we're going to use this term race and say race is real and it's obvious, look, black and white people are different. And I accept that, I can go and if I see a person, I can categorize their race. I believe that, physical anthropologists can do that as well. We can categorize people as broadly African, European, Asian, and then you've got some smaller groups like Native American, Australian Aboriginal. But it's a confusion of terms, because sometimes people use the term race and what they mean is nation or ethnicity, and other times they're talking about a continental ancestry group. So you have to define that term, and people, not only do they refuse to define it, but they use a kind of superposition of definition to obscure the truth of the matter. I believe the whole thing is, essentially promoted by the government. I don't believe in religions of racial resentment. I believe that races do not need to be at war with each other. I believe that the ancient world was filled with multiracial civilizations like Egypt and Babylon and even the Indus River Valley. I think we've had multiracialism, since the beginning of civilization, essentially. So I don't have a problem with multiracialism per se. I don't think it's the biggest problem. I think certainly it presents issues. I mean, certainly we understand that if people are more similar, that maybe they'll have a better time getting along. But I think a lot of it has to do with religion. I think we have a religion of racial resentment. I remember being in school, and they would teach us, and they would say, black people in this country have a hard time. And I would say, well, why do they have a hard time? And they'd say, it's because people are racist. And I would say, why are people racist? And they would say, well, it's because it's because of slavery. People are racist because of slavery. I said, how does that relate? How does the fact that black people were enslaved at one time, which is even in that not entirely accurate to say that, because in fact, slavery and serfdom, everybody was enslaved at some point, right? Not just black people. Black people were enslaving black people, right? So it's more nuanced, but let's just accept it. So you're telling me that racism exists because black people were enslaved. How does that work? How does black people being enslaved equal that people are racist today? And they say, well, people think back on the time, this is how it was explained to me, is people think back on the time when black people were slaves, and then they create like an implicit association. They say, well, they used to be slaves, and therefore they're lower, or they're less capable, or something. And I said, okay, well, if that's a problem, why don't we just erase the memory of slavery? Why don't we just sort of do the Men in Black, CIA, sort of erase people's memories? Why don't we stop talking about it? Because that was the narrative that was given to me. If we talk about slavery, race, slavery, then that's what people are going to think about and talk about. Now, I'm not arguing necessarily for some kind of egalitarian colorblind conservatism, because I think that, you're going to have statistical differences. I'm not too concerned with those. I think people get really worked up about those on the left and the right and think they're significant. I don't think they're that significant. I don't care about them. I don't think we have to care about them. I don't think we have to live in a society where we're constantly concerned and worrying about, on like a pop culture celebrity level or a theocratic religious level, what do we do about the difference in divorce rate and dropout rate and these sorts of things. And I'd say that there are ways to address those, but I don't think they're addressed through some kind of hysterical alarmism. I think you can address those. I think you can reduce inequality. I don't know if you can eliminate inequality, but I think there are a lot of good and productive things. I think the black community, for example, has shown itself to be completely capable of, living in America and conducting themselves in a way that is not unsustainable. I think you saw for a long time that, and to an extent you could say in the present day, black people are not the problem with our country. So I think when people call themselves racialists, they're doing one of two things. They are confusing the term race, and number one. And number two, they are blaming everything on black people. When black people, just as I don't blame the people who are Trump supporters, I also don't blame people who are black, right? And that includes all of those things that people lay blame upon them for, such as, the problem in our country now is black on white crime. We've talked about that before, that 533 white people a year are supposedly killed by blacks in black on white crime, is the latest data from, I guess, the last couple of years. And that's not the biggest problem in our country. So when you call yourself a racialist, you're choosing a title that you're not doing it out of the goodness of your heart and in order to seek truth and enlighten people and make the world a better place. You're doing it as a form of self-ostracization. and you're pretending that it's for this noble act, and you get to feel like, oh, I'm sacrificing for the truth. That's not the big problem in our country. Black people don't make my life worse on a daily basis. Now, if I lived maybe in the middle of an inner city ghetto or something, if I lived in a black neighborhood where I was the only white person and I acted, well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to act, but, you know, certainly it's not the case that I just think everyone is happy and gets along and sings kumbaya and whatever like that. Um, but it's just not the big problem in our country. And so when you focus on that, you're taking a lot of cons without bringing a lot of pros to the table. There's a lot of consequences and not a lot of benefits. And I think there's a lot of flaws and a lot of problems with that perspective. As I've talked about in many other videos, as you can find on my channel, I think it's called Against Racist Liberalism or Liberal Racism or Progressive Racism. But you can search racism on my channel and you can go watch those videos. No succession means you succeed in seceding. I guess. Aristo pilled. Racism is whack, my dudes. Race isn't real. We're all one race, one love. That's not actually what I said, but okay. This idea, again, they try to, do this hyperpolarization, black and white thinking where, like, you either have to believe that, like, black people are superior or you have to believe the exact opposite. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's something that's invented by the mainstream. It's part of the billionaire class and their plot to destroy us. So I don't buy into that. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel all right. Love from India. One struggle, my dudes. Yeah, I didn't say that either. I don't believe in one struggle. I don't think that, Bolivian Marxists are going to save me or something like that. I'm too big-brained to be a racialist. No, I'm just not stupid enough to be a racialist, and I'm not immature enough to be a racialist. It's a term that people adopt because they want to feel like a big man rebelling against the system. They want to feel like a dissident. And it's stupid, and in fact, it's pathetic because you are making black people into an enemy. And you're literally, you're going and you're asking who's at the bottom of the totem pole of American capitalism. And you find the people who are the most impoverished, the most jailed, the most illiterate. I'm not saying that in a disparaging sense. I'm saying that I think there's a lot of problems that are going on, and I think anyone who is on the left will agree with me that the black community has these disparate outcomes. You're picking the people who are the least threat to the power system, and you're saying this person's my enemy, and I'm going to form my identity around insulting and degrading and making fun of people who actually need help. I wish I could help. I can't. I don't have the power to help them. But I'm at the very least not going to form a political identity, an ideology, in fact, religion. These people are religious fanatics who call themselves racialists. They say, oh, I'm willing to die for the sake of racialism. You're pathetic, and I'm not on your team. I'm not on your side. Racialism isn't politically viable. That's why I don't make videos. There comes a time when we heed a call, when the world must come together. There are people dying. Oh, it's a time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift. We can't go on pretending day by day that someone somewhere soon make a change. We're all a part of God's great big family, and the truth, love is all we need. We are the world. We are the children. We're the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our lives. It's true, we'll make a better day, just you and me. Okay, well, here's the issue. Here's the issue with all of that. Just because I don't make an identity around saying the N-word doesn't mean that I think everyone will get along, and I'm still a minoritarian. I still don't believe in mass populism as a foundation for power. I believe it's an expression of power. So that's my response to all of that. I was homeless for a while. It doesn't do you much good, really. There's a period where you have a lot of zazz, odd as it sounds, but you lose that. It's not a good look. Yeah, I don't believe you should be homeless your whole life, but I think if you're very young, physically fit, agile, quick on your feet, and that sort of thing, and you have a vehicle, I don't know. Well, it depends. And when I say homeless, it doesn't mean you're sleeping outside. I've never recommended sleeping outside. You can sleep in a shack. You can sleep in many places. There are actually a lot of places you can find to sleep, but I don't recommend sleeping outside. Um, Mark is talking about his deepfake GF. Can you please read my messages on stream? I think most things taste better when I make them. I'm often too lazy to prepare meals. Everyone tell him at least read it, destined to rule the world. It's a shame that he's taking that angle. Yeah, it's a shame that people are so pathetic that they feel the need to, like, talk down about black people and make that into a political religion and think that is threatening to the power structure just because they're going to invert the religion of racial resentment, and somehow that's going to harm the billionaire class that's created the superstructure. That's a shame. What type of girl does Ken like? I like all kinds of girls, but Amish girls, man, I feel like Amish girls are too good for me. I wouldn't want to corrupt the purity of the Amish girls. They deserve better. Road trip to Lancaster. Oh my God. That's weird. I do not like sick, pale, and frail-looking girls. I would prefer the strong tomboy. Blonde or brunette? You know the answer. Let's scroll up here. We're scrolling. We're scrolling. Okay, we've reached the point. Let's just say they don't call him Ken Blonde. Oh, interesting. Mommy, athletic, stoic, tomboy GF versus morbid, frail, weak, pale, ethereal GF. Yeah. Okay, my biggest turnoff is when a girl tells me, yeah, I get sick all the time. Like, I'm sick like 6 times a year. I'm just like always getting sick. I'm always getting something. I'm always having a problem. Oh, I'm sick again. Okay, stay away from me. Stay away from me. I want the girl who's like, yeah, I like eat food off the floor, and I eat bugs, and I eat dirt, and I haven't been sick in 25 years. Something like that, you know. That's more my preference. Slim Ken better than Chubby Ken. Yeah, well, you know, hey, at least I'm not morbidly obese. How about that? How about that? Slim Ken is better. We all know it's true. We all know it's true. But, you know, it's... I'm either a Skeletor, I'm either like Skeletor, weak, sickly, frail, or I'm chubby and more vigorous. 250 pounds, dice to the bones. Bro, you were deceived by thinking those frames were a good idea. Nah, kidding, they just look good. Look, you know, people disrespect the frames, but the frames are good. All too common these days. I understand what they are getting at. I think it's a lower ideal than the strictly spiritual. Every great philosopher assumed racial homogeneity as a good. I actually don't think that's like a big part of the history of philosophy, but okay. People get a visit from the cops and quickly become realist leftists. I describe myself as a deep leftist, not a realist leftist. But I mean, realism is just a good thing in general. And I actually think people who get visits from the cops more often become like, well, there's a lot of people like that, to be honest. I think, honestly, a lot of people are Hal Turner. If you want to know the truth, people get visits from the cops, end up like Hal Turner. Those frames are epic. My parents who grew up in the Soviet Union tell me that they felt like there was more free speech after Khrushchev than there is in the US. I control the power. My parents who grew up in a sewer say the sewer is pretty epic. True story. Plus, when we refer to those older, less materialistic philosophers, the racial thing was just a given, didn't need to be harped on. Yeah, when you call yourself a racialist, you're making an implicit declaration that harping on that is going to help anyone, anywhere, anytime, which is a very strange proclamation to make. I know a guy who fled Poland during the martial law crackdown says the same thing. His whole family wants to go back. For real, do you believe it's a genuine biological fact or a social construct? Are Italians white? Genuine question. Some are, some aren't. Are you schizo? They hate for the color of their skin. Why don't you go back to Poland? There's only the human race. Let's see. Yes, Italians are mostly anyway. Italians aren't like Danes. Sicilians and Northern Italians ain't the same. I can't understand how some of you socialists classify Swedes and Greeks in the same group while at the same time being anti-Christian. Wow, BTFO'd. Black Kenneth Brown. When people talk about race, they mean ethnicity. That's actually not what people mean when they say race. That's actually not what people mean, but okay, bro, you can assert that. Ethnicities are real. Race is a continuum. I believe that ethnicities are real and that they are also socially constructed. This monologue makes me think Ken has a black GF. You're going to find out. One day my black GF is going to come on stream with me. I'm like John McAfee here with my black GF. Most Italians are a mixture of Euros, North Africans, and Middle Easterners. Jungle fever. Italians aren't a single ethnicity. They're comprised of... That's not true. There's such a thing as an Italian ethnicity. See, now you're just getting into the silliness of it. You're just abusing terms and nobody can know what you're talking about because you're saying, well, when people say race, they mean ethnicity. And actually, Italy has multiple ethnic... So you're saying there's multiple races in Italy? Most people on the street, if you say, like, do you think Italy, like, do you think native Italians are, like, multiple races? Do you think northern Italians are a different race from southern Italians? Do you see how silly this is? Do you see how silly it is? It's ridiculous. Linux and Python have stripped the master-slave computer programming. They claimed it was traumatic. Nobody asked the Slavs who were so enslaved there. That's actually not true. The term Slav does not come from the word slave. Slava in the Proto-Slavic means glory. So it literally means the glorious ones, the glorious people. He is not a racialist because he loves listening to Juice WRLD. Very true. It divides North and South. There's a genetic influence. All you people are just... who cares? Oh, hey guys, I'm a racialist. I believe that Northern Italians and Southern Italians are different. And like, oh, I'm gonna like call myself a racialist. And like, that's the biggest problem. Like, people don't know about Northern and Southern Italians. I mean, it's on the same level as the circumcision people with that. Race isn't real. We're all one love. Race is a continuum, so it's a social construct since there's no objective. This debate is stupid. And it's started by racialists every time. I don't want to talk about it. They want to talk about race. I don't deny race is real, says Mark. Danes are a single ethnicity. Italians are three distinct ones. I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. I can't do it. Ugh. Nowadays, rappers just need to drop the occasional emotional track about racism wedged between 5 diss tracks, 7 songs about butt cheeks. People throw millions. I've never heard Juice WRLD talk about racism. Maybe he does, but I just like the one where he's like, I always say I don't want to reminisce, but I think he says, I don't ever want to miss. I can't remember. I have a real hard time remembering lyrics, but I'm very good with the melody. I always say I don't want to reminisce when this type of love don't always come and go. Very good. There's nothing about racism in that one. Although, is that really a rap song? It's like this kind of punk, Ice-T does that kind of... By the way, Ice-T is not black. Just public service announcement. He's not a black man. In case anybody was wondering. Do you not believe in personal accountability? That sounds very libertarian. Tuscany isn't even in Italy. Romans were cool. Racialism, you mentioned it. Most people call them ethno-nationalists. Okay. Very silly federal narratives. The left are no longer liberal. Danish people do something cool. I got to scroll up here. Strawman people who are defending their racial homelands. There's no such thing as a racial homeland. I don't identify as a racialist. Okay, that's just, you're just lying now. I will defend the term racial. Why aren't you a racialist? You should be a racialist. I don't identify as a racialist. Okay. It's fundamental for a highly functioning civilization. You know what's fundamental? How about people like you stop talking and we actually deal with real issues? How about, would that be fundamental? I think that's pretty fundamental. I think the existence of black people is not a threat to anything. I think the existence of a billionaire class is a problem, and you're distracting from that. Danes are sought after sperm donors in Brazil and Japan. Self-preservation, not putting down other races. Dude, there's no such thing as the white race. The white race isn't going to save you. Bill Gates is white. Okay, I'm trying to think of some of the unambiguously white ones. So we've got Bill Gates, we've got Warren Buffett, we've got Donald Trump. We've got people who are very white. Okay. Oh, we got to preserve. The quote-unquote white race is going to be preserved just fine. When has Ken become a soy boy? Was this recent? I'm just thinking of the meme of the guy opening the mouth, and it's like, look at my racialist. Look, my racialist. Yeah, you got to read. I mean, I got all these textbooks about racialism and the difference between the North and Southern Italians. And okay, bro, keep analyzing maps of Austria-Hungary and tell me that I'm the soy boy. Mr. Western Man, what do you have there? Some kind of weird Celtic symbol as your profile picture. Preserving what? The genes of your population. Ken versus Joel. What are we going to debate about? If he wants to challenge me to a debate, I guess I would consider it. I don't think there's anything for us to debate. Why do you say it's an arbitrary epoch? Our civilizational feats are arbitrary. See, there's too much. There's too much. This is not the debate we should be having. I don't want Europe to become a majority African and Indian. I don't hate them, though. Well, you know, it's not that. The idea that you have to look at, again, these things as all or nothing, like, I either call myself a racialist, which is a religious term, fundamentally. I mean, these people are religious. They're just as religious as the people who call themselves atheists. And by the way, a lot of them are the atheists. But you either have to be someone who calls yourself a racialist, or you have to be overjoyed at the idea that, like, Europe is going to become like Brussels writ large. I don't think that's a valid dichotomy. I don't think that's like, that kind of black and white thinking is realistic or necessary. I think it's part of the mainstream narrative of hyperpolarization to distract from, frankly, you look at what happened after Occupy Wall Street, and that's when they started pushing all this stuff. I think the migrant crisis was a response in many ways to Occupy Wall Street. I think they want people to be thinking racially, and they don't want people to deal with the fundamentals of capitalism. Ken versus Fox Day. Wow, that would be boring. I'm also European. You're just weird. Why would you want to displace us with the third world? Are you dopey? Yeah, I don't want to replace people with third world. I just think that identifying. Arvel says, hey, what do you think of the North Italian race? Also circumcision. What do you think about the rate of circumcision? What do you think about the effect? You know, because circumcision obviously affects different races differently. So, like, when Northern Italians are circumcised, like, their race is going to have a different, it's going to be different from the Southern Italian race when they get circumcised. So, that's very important. I call myself a anti-circumcision racialist. That's my title. I am an anti-circumcision. No, I can't even say that. It's not even funny. Vox Day just did a new video about how he's 88% confident Trump will remain the president. Oh, man. Yeah, he is a big problem. I mean, like, I don't have a problem with the Trump supporters. I have a problem with people like Vox Day. He is a narcissist. He is. And I am not at all on his team whatsoever. Slave is derived from Slav. Not true. Slava in Slavic means glorious. You don't know any of the Slav. I mean, there's no actual expert on etymology who's going to tell you that that's pop etymology. It's wrong. It's a false cognate. I'm Indian. We want to live in the West. If you oppose that, you're a racist. Supposed displacement is not a concern. Yeah, I mean, look, I think we wouldn't have mass racial resentment and mass migration in the way that it's being conducted if we didn't have capitalism. Look at the people who are instantiating mass migration. It's not the migrants themselves, it's the capitalist billionaire class. Italians are 7 distinct races. 3 are real, 4 are ethnicities. The latter 4 descend from Danes and Tuscans. The other 3 Sicilian-based races descend from Italy. Oh, yes. Very important that we call ourselves racialists and understand all of this minutia. Very important that we understand the differences between blacks and whites so that we can what? We can feel better about the fact that, you know, the world's being polluted, and we can feel better about the fact that we're being poisoned ideologically, and that's part of it. I mean, racialism is a type of ideological poison. And you don't fight poison by inverting the poison, right? You don't, if someone dumps acid on your head, you don't say, oh, well, I'm going to take an extremely basic material and dump that on my head. It doesn't, the effect will not be the neutralization of the acid. The effect will be you've been scarred with acid, and then you follow that up with scarring with a basic, whatever you call that, scarred with the basic materials. Such a weird word, the base versus the acid. But anyway, you get the metaphor. The solution to the religion of racial resentment that attacks whiteness in service of the billionaire class is not solved by hating black people or saying, we're defending our race. Or like, no, the white race is not a fundamental functional identity. Ethnicities are functional. Whiteness is not an ethnicity. America is a very confused country. It's an empire where ethnicity is just as confused as it was in the Mediterranean at the time of Christ. And that's why I believe we need a new Christianization. And we saw this before with Zoroastrianism and many others. So that's why I believe in religion and technology, not racialism, as a vector of positive change. Any illustrative historical example of high-low versus the middle? I still don't get it. Bro, you still don't get high-low versus the middle? I don't know that you're ever going to get high-low versus the middle. Europe will become an empire. Australia belongs to everybody. Thoughts on Chuck's Sneed and Feed? Whoa. Won't matter who inhabits, that's my thought. My thought is, whoa. Won't matter who inhabits where if the whole world's governed by the same ideology. Very true. Enjoying the bountiful fruits. What do you mean? Get in goo. Okay, I don't know what that means. We love you, Ken. Don't let them despair you. It's a rough ride out here. Do you envision Spanish ever replacing English as the lingua franca? Possibly. Not yet. Hopefully they will. The question about epochs was directed not at you, but Mark B. Yeah, it's a very confusing thing, but a lot of my points still stand. There will be no gulags. AIPAC controls the country. I don't think AIPAC alone controls the... You know, George Soros is not a Zionist. So to say that AIPAC controls the country is a deeply flawed, monomaniacal, anti-Zionist narrative. I don't partake in that. White billionaires became rich, perpetuating the Jewish system of global No. Capitalism was not invented by Jewish people. And yes, Jewish people are part of capitalism. There's such a thing as Jewish billionaires. They're not the only ones. And the idea is that, oh, if they all just went to Madagascar, then everything would be solved. No, my friend. They have adopted a minoritarian strategy that has allowed them to take advantage of the capitalist system, but they didn't create it, and they are not the only ones perpetuating it. And without them, it would still be on the same course that we're on now, where people like Bill Gates are trying to poison you because they hate you, because that's the incentive of a mercantile system, is to destroy everybody with lies and deceptions and poisons rather than the priestly conception or the warrior conception. You know, the priestly conception is you have a kind of theocratic warfare, spiritual war, and the warrior conception, of course, is a material war. But the mercantile conception is a war of poison and deception, and that's why we are where we're at today. The post-liberals are racialists. They won't accept it. Join me, my brother. We shall unite. Post-liberals aren't racialists. Let's scroll up. Ken doing anti-woke leftist. Okay. It wasn't aimed at you, Ken. I was speaking to Mark. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on. White people coming up with various ideologies, making me look desperate. Anti-woke leftists are in favor of porn being legal. Yeah, I don't identify as like being part of... We might actually listen to them today. How many? We're 2 hours in. I still have like 50 bookmarks to show you. Capital and desires. I'm not a racialist. I didn't say Slav is derived from slave. The English word slave just happens to be derived from Slav. Is that true? That could possibly be true. I don't actually think it is true, but I think it comes from Sklav. Sklav is different from Slav. It's actually part of the tripartite class system in ancient Scandinavia, the Sklavs. So show me some Wiktionary links, bro. Don't just assert this. Very few people, because I've had this debate many times. Very few people are racialists, as Ken says. Polarization is being pushed deliberately. I don't support Israel currently. It's not liberal enough. Once it ends its apartheid system with the Palestinians, I will gladly call them my brothers. Which people who align themselves with the dissident right do you like? Hey, I can like a lot of people. I like Keith. I like Keith because he's a nice person. I like him. I've never spoken with him or anything like that. I just think that the way he talks, the way he speaks, the way he presents himself, the way his face. He has a nice face, you know. He's kind of like, you know, he has that face that I feel like grandmothers, they flock to. Oh, you're such a nice young boy, you know. He's got that nice young boy face. Don't take anything out of that, which is not what I'm saying, but you will anyway. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I like Keith. Now, do I agree with Keith? No, I don't agree with him on a lot of things, or probably most things, but I like him in a sense that I think if we were, you know, we had to do something non-political, you know, if we had to, I don't know, climb a rock wall or do some kind of team building exercise, I feel like we could get along. But I don't agree with him. I don't agree with the dissident right, and I don't want to be on the same team as them. I don't want to go down with their ship. Look at that massive gamer callus. What massive gamer on my hands? Are you talking about my hand? Like, do I have a callus on my hands? I don't do much gaming. I do chess. Is that gaming? White countries should accept refugees. Ken bases his judgment on whether people are nice, which is a good position. The luck of the Irish. Ken likes Keith. No. Randy, you're a bad man. Keith is pretty off the goop. The one struggle in Naswell stuff is crazy. Yeah, there's some stuff I don't agree. On your wrist from using your... What are you talking about? What? The fact that this is red? That's just because I have sensitive skin. So when I put my hand on the desk, yeah, it gets... Yeah, my hands look weird. Yes, I do not have model hands. They're weird. I have weird little hands, but I can't do anything about it. Until I get, like, Star Wars hands, mechanical hands, we're just stuck with the hands that we've got. Russia is accepting South African refugees. My chess rating is 1600. Okay, we're going to go to the bookmarks. We're going to go to the bookmarks. We're going to figure out a way to do this. We got to figure out a way to do this. All right, so We talked about red-pilled billionaires. I'm just going to start deleting some of these. Trump and Franco, Masons versus Deep State, Canaris and Kushner. Yeah, Francisco Franco always talked about the Freemasons, and then he ended up being with Admiral Canaris, and Trump always talks about the globalists, and his closest advisor is Kushner. So that was an interesting metaphor. Mass Frank Hasselism. Yeah, I think that's an explanation for what went on in the Capitol as a type of mass Frank Hasselism. Just more evidence of the importance of Frank Hassel. Olinto de Preto is an interesting guy to look into as far as Einstein. We have a quote here. You know how Van Gogh ate yellow paint because yellow is a bright color? He thought eating it would make him happy, and everyone thought he was crazy for eating something so poisonous and toxic, but look at it through less judgmental eyes. You see that he is just like everyone else who drinks alcohol for the taste. Everyone wants to get drunk and to forget. No one smokes weed because they like the taste. They smoke it because it makes them happier. Why do you think that girl stays with her cheating boyfriend? Because when he's not cheating on her, he makes her feel happy, even though it's toxic and poisonous. The reality is we're all just desperately searching for a way to be happy, even if it isn't good for us. Like everything we do is our yellow paint. So that was an interesting quote I found. That was a little interesting quote. There's a quote here. It took 3 years to go from banning the first person on the internet to banning the President of the United States from the internet. An interesting quote. Chinese government unveils plan for European semi-autonomous zone within Xinjiang. I don't know if that's true, but kind of an interesting idea. The Spanish spent 700 years on the Reconquista. Another interesting thought to think upon. The real three branches of government are the intelligence community, academia, and the media, which corresponds with the tripartite class system of the warrior class, the priest class. Well, the problem here is that the intelligence community and academia and media all have priestly functions. They're all controlled, ultimately, I would say, by the merchant class, which is the issue why we don't have a genuine priest class in these. They are submissive priest classes to the merchant class. They're not independent priest classes. And so academia and the media, academia is sort of the highbrow priest class, and then media is the lowbrow. But the intelligence community does have an aspect where they do engage in more warrior class type action, in their terroristic activities. 2020, I would say the three branches of government are Wall Street, the media and academia, and then I guess it would be the military. Or I would say big tech. I would actually say big tech is the warrior class. Effectively, they've outsourced the warrior function to technology. So big tech is the warrior class, and then Wall Street is the merchant class, and then intelligence communities where we get our media and academia. So that would be the tripartite class system there. 2020 is the worst year in human history, he said while waiting for his DoorDash to arrive and settling in for a Hulu marathon. Yeah, that was an interesting tweet by Michael Tracy where he's trying to get across the idea that everything's fine, guys, when actually that's miserable. That's terrible. We shouldn't think that just because we're comfortable that's not like a type of hell on earth. Zeus tricked Kronos, established Age of Gods. Isaac and his mom tricked Abraham to establish the tribe of Israel. I'm going to save that one because I'm going to put that in my religion section because that is a very interesting one. Where's my religion section here? I've got history. Okay. We're going to put that in our theology section. Zeus tricked Kronos, just like Isaac tricked Abraham. Very interesting to think about in the context of people who say that Judaism is a Semitic insertion into European culture. It's actually the opposite. Actually, Jewish myth all comes from Indo-European myth. People don't know this. China has conducted human testing on soldiers to develop soldiers with biologically enhanced capabilities, according to Director of U.S. National Intelligence John Ratcliffe. So very interesting genetic manipulation going on there. Bullies are the way that a society forces its weakest members to learn to defend themselves. Without this, people become helpless, which is what manipulators want. The bully is the last line of defense against the domination of passive-aggressive manipulators. More Frank Hasselism there. Degeneracy is not a problem to be solved, but a solution, meaning that it is not an obstacle in so much as it is a method of changing the culture. Then we have here introduction to the channel, physicality, warrior, conservative, nostalgia, masculinity, nationalism, anti-racism, anti-militia, atheists, things which are powerful and destructive, class systems, liberalism, science, immigration, academia, priesthood, agriculture, urbanism, industrialism, literacy, capitalism, democracy, abstraction, mental consciousness, structure, sexuality. That was an interesting thing that I wrote up. Is a single brain neuron conscious? That's an interesting question. Is a single brain neuron I think I'm going to put that in the religion section. I think that's sort of it gets into the question of consciousness. What is a single brain neuron conscious? At what point do you need 100 neurons? Do you need 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000? How many neurons do you need to achieve consciousness? February 2011, Rumsfeld endorsed the repeal of military's Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, saying that allowing gays and lesbians to openly serve is an idea whose time has come. Very interesting. That was in the middle of Obama's first term, I guess. Good old Donald Rumsfeld. And then it talks about, this was from a Wikipedia article, Lowenstein was a close friend of conservative commentator William Buckley, who featured Lowenstein on numerous firing line programs, endorsed his candidacies for Congress, delivered a eulogy at his funeral. Lowenstein was Donald Rumsfeld's best friend in Congress during Lowenstein's term of office, the two having become good friends while serving in Congress aides in the 1950s. Despite their ideological differences, Rumsfeld joined Lowenstein on the Victory platform upon Lowenstein's election to Congress in 1968. In 1970, Rumsfeld defended Lowenstein against his Republican opponent's attacks, only to recant and endorse the opponent under pressure from Republican organization, the Nixon White House. Allard Lowenstein, an old guy to look at. Lowenstein seems to be a Democrat who was very friendly with Rumsfeld and Buckley back in the day, so might be interesting to look into his biography. There's an interesting chart here about prolactin. I haven't quite figured out what we're going to talk about with prolactin. I might leave that till later. The Anti-Masonic Party, known as the Anti-Masonic Movement, was the first third party in the United States, so interesting to look at the history of conspiratorial thinking in the United States with the Anti-Masonic Party. Did it accomplish anything? Was it effective? What does it mean? Billy Wright and gay black evangelical rock and roll. We did talk about that on DLive. And we've got a commenter here says, there used to be a lot of flamboyant gay black preachers, Prophet Jones and Sweet Daddy Grace, for example. Yeah, I would point to that. This happened in the 1950s. The 1950s was an age of gay black evangelical preachers. Here's an interesting one. Ashley Babbitt was a polyamorous bisexual, and they're making her into a martyr for the Trump movement. Ashley Babbitt, polyamorous bisexual. Interesting in the context of who and what Trump and his movement represents. Let's try to skip some of these weird hand comments. Slav slave, first recorded around 800. Sklavos comes from Byzantine Greek sklabos, which appears around 580. Okay, sklavos comes from Greek sklabos. Okay, well, where does Greek sklabos? Is Greek sklabos from the Slavic people? I believe they called them Scythians, not Slavs. Jazz hands. Men who prove you have sensitive skin show feet pics. Can look chubby in arvels. Oh, chubby, chubby. How does your weight fluctuate so much? Well, I just lose weight very quickly. and I gain weight very slowly. So I'll gain weight and then I'll lose it all. All right, we're going to take a look at our bookmarks. Let's see what you guys are saying about all this. You know, Ken does have a similar style to Luke Ford. I wonder if he knows who Luke Ford is. The EU, what do you think about CDU elections? I don't. Germany should have open borders. Wow, the chat's just terrible tonight. This is crazy. You people. Let's keep scrolling. Let's keep scrolling. You should hang with libertarian types. Free them from the confines and impositions of this oppressive world. I'm Indian. I want access to your lands. I can't. I might just start mass banning everybody. This is so insufferable. Did I get to the bottom? Oh, I think I did get to the bottom. All right. People are just talking about race. That's all people can talk about. All right. Here's the interesting one with Joe Biden appointing somebody who believes that blacks have a decalcified pineal gland. Christopher Stanton, Georgia, committed suicide as one of the people who attended the rally in D.C. Here's a link I have to open up. Cannabis users were 41% less likely to conceive than non-users. I'm going to put that in my pollution section because that sounds like a pollution of the reproductive system. I almost said the fertile system. I'm talking about the reproductive system here. Cannabis. Women who use cannabis could have more difficulty in conceiving. All right, that's going in pollution. But where is pollution? It's not in the religion section. Is it in the politics section? Yeah, it's in the politics section. So yeah, pollution, the pollution of the reproductive system. The use of cannabis. 41% of women who use cannabis regularly have difficulty conceiving children. That's a very interesting effect of cannabis. Probably a reason not to smoke cannabis. The Vamic Court. I don't know what to say about the Vamic Court. You could just read the Wikipedia article for the Vamic Court. Some kind of medieval polycentric law system. Joe Biden saying we need a strong Republican Party. Maybe we can fire up the old OBS and listen to what President Biden has to say. Where's the window capture? We'll just call it window capture 2. And I think the tab is going to be called new tab. Let's see if I can see what's going on here. Okay. So if I take this and I put this over here like this, then this might work. Okay, but it's like it's in my face. I have to move myself. All right, now we're over here. Let's hear what he says.
Quite frankly, I've had a number of my Republican colleagues, former colleagues, I used to serve in the Senate for a long time, call me. Many of them are as outraged and disappointed and embarrassed and mortified by the president's conduct as I am and Democrats are. And I think I have said from the beginning, and I have not changed my view, my overarching objective is to unify this country. We must unify the country. And I think that you've heard me say this before, and I apologize for repeating myself, but understandably the questions are repetitive and good. I mean, I'm not being critical of the question. And that is that there's two ways people are inspired: by inspirational leaders and by terrible leaders. By terrible leaders. What this president has done is rip the Band-Aid all the way off to let the country know who he is and what he's about and how thoroughly unfit for office he is. And you see already a number of Republicans. I was so proud. I know we're on opposite sides. I'll get criticized from some of the people in my party for saying this, but I've worked very hard with and against the former, soon-to-be former Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. I thought what he said on the floor of the United States Senate was, in fact, the right thing to do. He stood up. He's ashamed. I spoke with a guy I have enormous respect for, and I ran against him, Mitt Romney. I spoke to Mitt this morning again. This is a man of enormous integrity, who lives his faith. There are so many more, but there's others who should be ashamed of themselves. But they make up a minority of the Republican Party. This isn't about Republican Democrat anymore. This is about people who understand what this country's about and the things we have to agree together on. I just think that if you look at it, speaking to some of my Republican colleagues, and I've spoken to a number of them over the last month since we've been elected, through recently as the day in which this god-awful debacle was taking place up on the Hill. And I think they understand that they're going to have to, we need a Republican Party. We need an opposition that's principled and strong. And I think you're going to see them going through this idea of what constitutes a Republican Party. And to hear some of my colleagues, Republican colleagues, talk about how shameful it is of the way Ted Cruz and others are dealing with this, how they're responsible as well for what happened.
Do you think some of them should resign? Should Senator Cruz or Senator Hawley resign?
I think they should be just flat beaten the next time they run. I think the American public has a real good, clear look at who they are. They're part of the big lie. The big lie. I was being reminded by a friend of mine, and maybe you were with me, I can't recall, when we were told that, Goebbels and the great lie, you keep repeating the lie, repeating the lie. Well, there was a print that when Dresden was bombed, firebombed, there were 250 people that were killed. Or was it 2,500 people were killed? And Goebbels said, no, 25,000 or 250,000 were killed. And our papers printed that.
What do you mean 250 people were bombed? Of course 2,500 people weren't bombed. Are you saying that 25,000 people were bombed? Certainly 250,000 people weren't bombed. Joe Biden meme moment. Oh, man.
Our papers printed it. It's the big lie. People will know it's one thing for one man.
Yeah, it's a bit. Only 250 people were killed in Dresden. We're talking about the big lie here.
One woman to repeat the lie over and over and over again. By the way, Trump said that before he ran. If you say it enough, I'm going to convince you. I'll say it enough. The press is bad. The press is bad. The press is bad. The press is bad. If he's the only one saying it, that's one thing. But the acolytes that follow him, like Cruz and others, they are as responsible as he is. And so it's not about whether or not they get impeached. It's about whether or not they can continue to hold power because of the disgust the American people have for their actions. There are decent people out there who actually believe these lies because they've heard it again and again. I was with a friend of mine who's a medical doctor telling me that his neighbor said to him, he lives in another state, his neighbor's a good person, said, but Doc, this is true. There's a lot of chicanery that went on in this election. He said, tell me what? Well, I just know there was. They say it is. They say it is. This is a human condition. You say it and say it and say it and say it. The degree to which it becomes corrosive is in direct proportion to the number of people who say it. And so it's interesting to me, and I was pleased to hear some of the more prominent Republicans say to me that Ted Cruz's of the world are as responsible in terms of people believing the lies as not as responsible, but similarly responsible like Trump. But they didn't say, go to the Capitol. I'll be with you. Follow. That's a different story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much.
I was looking for the specific quote where he says we need a Republican Party, we need an opposition that's principled and strong, with reference to the idea that people are saying, well, after this election, the Republicans can never win again, and, only the Democrats, it'll be a one-party state. Not as long as Joe Biden's around. Joe Biden wants a strong Republican Party. I think Joe Biden wants to lose the election in 2024, frankly. I think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they want to lose. I think you're going to get a type of a Marco Rubio type of standard Republican. I think the Republicans will do quite well in 2022 and quite well in 2024. I don't think we're going to have a one-party state. Now, even if they win in 2024, I think you're going to see a comeback of the Republican Party. It's not going to be good for you as an individual, but it's going to be an interesting one. I think there are plenty of people who want a federal ban. Legal. Black males are still being disproportionately affected. We shot down a legislative proposal in New Zealand. I wonder what's Joe's favorite Coldplay song. Maybe Yellow by Coldplay? I used to listen to all the Coldplay. You've got Yellow. You've got Viva La Vida. That's a pretty good one. You've got Sky Full of Stars. There's a lot of good Coldplay hits. Yellow is the saddest one. And then they have like their pop ones, Sky Full of Stars and Viva La Vida. And I can't think of the other ones. There's one that's like, Paradise. Paradise is another good Coldplay song. I remember when he played what did he play, like Despacito or something on his phone? He goes up to the podium and he's like, I just have one thing to say. And he starts playing Despacito. And then Trump put out a tweet where he changed the music to F the Police, which is pretty funny considering everything that's going on. Are you hiding a new Twitter account? I miss your Pew retweets. Nope. I have a Twitter account that I use to view tweets. I have not been tweeting. I thought about tweeting today, but no tweets today. The effects of single-family households outweigh those of weed smoking. Biden concern trolling Republicans. I don't think it's all a concern troll. Isn't Creep the white man's anthem? The only reference these people have is World War II. A great man is allowed to have some hiccups. He makes the numbers his own. He's fumbling over words due to dementia, doing a 200 IQ troll of Nazis. Yeah, that's a classic Joe moment there. Leader of the free world. Oligarchy can hide better with a two-party system. Very true. There was a video on BitChute called Liberal Nazi Communists Take Over America. This is how the average right-winger thinks. I find it interesting that the term slave, which has acquired specific racial connotations in the U.S., was originally derived from a term for a white ethnic group, the Slavs, who were targeted. This is not true, okay? This is not true. You are lying, okay? You are lying. This is not true. We're going to look up, because I've already said the term Slav, it derives from Slava. Now you're saying the slave, okay? I don't believe this. Sklavos. Sklavos. Really? It means Slav? You got to be kidding me. Are you serious right now? It comes from I don't believe this. I need some counter arguments. This doesn't fit into my preconceived etymology of slave. This can't be true. Slave, esclave, the Slavont. No, you can't be serious. Are you serious? The origin of the word slave? Oh no. Oh no. Oh man, this isn't good for me. This is bad. Are you serious? Oh, this is not good. This is not good at all. Can you believe this? Can you believe what's happening? I'm being fat. I had to do the research. I didn't believe it, but it's true. I didn't believe it, but it's true. I was wrong. Apparently, the word slave comes from the word Slav. Very sad. Very sad for the Slavic peoples today. Huge L for the Slavs. Clocks, yeah, clock is another. You can play that on the piano. Scientist. I don't know, Scientist is not my favorite one, but it's one of those songs. Joe is down with the kids. Let's see. I was thinking of Radiohead. Don't believe Google. I gotta believe Google on this one. Anti-Slavic propaganda. I've been owned. The Slavs name themselves after glory, but others use Slav as a synonym for slave. Yeah, very true. The truth shall set you free. Apologize to the Slavic community. The eternal Anglo trying to whitewash our Slavic history. Isn't it more likely that the word would come from the more mainstream Greco-Roman word than the much more obscure Germanic origin? Yeah, possibly. I think there is Sclav, Luxembourgish. I think the Germanic is Sclavari, Sclava, from Latin sclavus, which is from Greek. It's all the same thing. Can you believe I lied about? How would I just lie to all of you about that? Can't believe I would do that. You can never trust what's said at all. You can't trust. You cannot trust. Even I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just perpetuating falsehoods here. X and Y, never heard that one. Thoughts on talk? I don't know that one. You would be more into death metal? Nope. I'm into mainstream trash. Correct. That is the only stuff we listen to. We did 10 PaleoCon lies. The electoral winter. So the Joe Biden clip is in reference to the electoral winter. We're not going to have an electoral winter. It's a hoax. It's all these PaleoCons telling you, oh, if you don't vote for Trump, we're going to have an electoral winter. If we don't ban all immigrants, we're going to have an electoral winter. Nope. The Republicans will be fine. On immigration, the idea that that was an important issue. I mean, it's not. Homosexuality, that's an interesting one in the light of Ashley Babbitt. The idea that they're making heroes and martyrs out of people who have been the most pro-gay Republicans of all time, and they claim to be against homosexuality. That's always interesting. The lie that populism works, it clearly doesn't. Getting a bunch of people and telling them to go into the White House, or the Capitol building, I should say, obviously did not work. Capitalism does not work. Our healthcare system doesn't work. And then you've got these supposed insiders, like I guess Darren Beattie is the chairman of Holocaust education in the Trump administration or something. And he's supposed to be one of these Washington GOP insiders who's going to revolutionize the party. But it turns out nobody cares. Nobody cares about Darren Beattie. The people, and we're going to listen to Rudy Giuliani. We're going to get to Rudy. It's not super organized. I don't have a slideshow for you. I just have a bunch of random links and notes. But we'll get to what Rudy Giuliani thinks about people like Darren Beattie in a second. We'll come to that. I mean, Darren Beattie's Jewish, right? So it doesn't entirely apply. But essentially, spoiler alert, he calls them anti-Semites. And then the lie about black supremacy, right? This is why I was never for BLM, but I was always anti-BLM. I was never anti-racist as a thing in itself, in isolation. I guess you could say I'm not an anti-racist, I'm an anti-racialist. How about that? Does that make sense? But yeah, the black supremacy lie, the infiltrating the GOP goes along with the insiders. That was a lie. Trump's character, obviously problematic. But we've gotten a mass hassle in here. People, they said, we're going to hassle. We're going to hassle the Capitol building. They did. They hassled them. It was a mass hassling. The Tea Party and the Ron Paul movement evaporated, and this one will as well. Let's see. Spotted tonight at Cafe Milano, Secretary of State Pompeo and the head of Mossad, Israel's spy agency. That's an interesting story. Man photographed carrying speaker's lectern, never voted for Trump. Voter registration shows he's non-party affiliated, hasn't voted since he registered in 2002. So that's interesting. The the guy who stole the lectern is not even a Trump voter. That's incredibly interesting to me. Definitely a Haslund moment. People have seen this video. We might play a short little sad video for you. Let's see what this woman has to say.
I've worked for like 17 years. I work all the time. I've been paying medical bills on my son for 9 years since he was born. And he was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and has to have insulin every 2 hours. I just got his prescription. It was $1,000. I couldn't pay for it. I now have to go in and tell my 9-year-old son I couldn't pay for it. I work a full-time job. My husband works a full-time job. I work third shift. I go to school during the day. How are you guys making it? Am I the only one struggling? How are you guys doing?
So, there's a couple interesting things. First of all, there's the economic angle. That clearly, this is an average woman. Diabetes is a common condition. She can't pay for the insulin. Her son's life is in jeopardy. She's at the end of her rope. She doesn't have the finances. So there's the economic aspect. And then there's also the aspect where we're looking at diabetes as a condition. Now, there's two types. There's the type 1 and the type 2. I forget which one is which. One is from being obese, essentially, and the other one is from genetics, right? And this woman, frankly, I don't know. I'm not trying to insult her or anything. But she's kind of got this pale complexion, and obviously she's crying, but, look at the redness of the nose, right? I don't know about you guys, but we're going to find out that you can tell who's a liberal and a conservative by their physiognomy. Now, that's not me asserting that. We've got the data to back that up now. She's got this pale skin, red nose. I believe that, it's type 1, the genetic diabetes. I believe there's a certain phenotype because I think there's some kind of founder effect. I think there's some kind of phenotypic connection with that type of diabetes, and she certainly has the type of complexion and facial morphology that I would associate with genetic diabetes. So I believe not only should we be trying to help people who have diabetes, but we should also be trying to stop diabetes from perpetuating itself. So there's a larger issue there at play. We have to think about health in an intergenerational context. You've got people who are telling us we have to stop having children to save the planet, but, you can't say stop having children to stop the perpetuation of type 1 diabetes. It's an interesting conundrum we find ourselves in, and again, I think these are some of the big issues that, the billionaire class creates, a type of wrong from both ends situation where, you can't, on the one hand, there's so many things wrong. It's like she can't pay for the medication. We're allowing the disease, it's a genetic disease, to persist in our population. We don't have to. We have the technology. We have the mechanisms of social control that, frankly, they have a thing in Israel called genetic counseling. I believe all couples should receive free genetic counseling. I don't think we should perpetuate these genetic diseases. I don't believe in letting the child die. I think, we should help people, and I think that it's a terrible thing. We don't want to perpetuate it. We don't want to have a situation where this happens. And, frankly, when you have some kind of genetic disease like this, it's a big issue. It's a big problem. But it does, when we think about the scale and the scope of health in America, a lot of it is the diet and the obesity and epigenetic effects as well. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I do believe that there could be epigenetic reasons for diabetes as well. I mean, with all these things, you put stress on, as we said, cannabis, the reproduction system. How much of the 1960s was just about destroying our genetic potential through epigenetic changes? So there's a lot to unpack with this video. Not to be a social Darwinist, but just to look at some of the deeper problems we have here. Let's see if I can take this image and throw it up here. This is, I gotta make it a bit smaller, party affiliation of U.S. whites without four-year college degree. So what it shows is that back in 1999, it was pretty much the same. So these are your quote-unquote white working class people. And they went from 1999 essentially being the same, and then they drifted apart, and during the Bush years, you started to see a difference. You started to see, I guess you'd call them the country hicks, whatever, they're supporting Bush, and the other, I guess the blue would be, it's just the simple percentage. So it's those who support Republicans versus Democrats. So they start to support Republicans, and then it goes down. The second term of Bush starts to decline, and then reaches a meeting point with Obama. It has been drifting apart ever since, and it has to make you wonder if we're ever going to reach that point again that we did during Clinton and during, you know, Obama. The end of Clinton, or the beginning of Bush, and the beginning of Obama. If we're ever going to reach a dip point where whites without four-year college degrees ever go back to the Democrat Party, I don't know if we're ever going to see that, but it is interesting to think about in terms of the cyclical nature of politics, that not too long ago things were like this. So interesting political statistics to look at. I'm going to put that in my politics section. I think I have a section on political statistics. Yep, it's already in there. All right, now that we have a new image up here, we'll check in. We're talking about, he's got a white girl's taste in music, very true. You're exposed as a pseudo-intellectual, you caught me. Everybody caught me. Coldplay's Amsterdam Clocks. I don't know Amsterdam, and I don't know Shiver. I guess I'm not as big of a Coldplay fan as I thought I was. You're not a Coldplay fan. A true man of culture enjoys thoroughly both low and highbrow culture. All right, that's a very presumptuous. It's like a parody. I've listened to all Coldplay songs. I'm not sure if you should admit that to people. Did you ever care about social justice warriors when it was big in 2016? Many young guys got into social justice warrior freak out YouTube. I heard people talking about it. Ken versus Darren Beatty debate. Yeah, we can do that. I'll go on Tucker and we'll do that. A true man of culture enjoys no culture. He transcends it. My father would always play Coldplay on the radio. I have strong nostalgia. Someone messaged Joe, ask him about Coldplay. Yeah, let's get in contact. I think Jordan B. Peterson brought a lot more SJW type ideology into the public consciousness. Why do I need culture? Okay. Have you gotten into postmodern philosophy in Frankfurt School? Are you an analytic guy? How about neither? Derrida writes his books in PGP. I don't know what that means. Type 2 is from obesity. Type 1 is genetic. Type 2 is estimated to be 50% lifestyle, 50% genetic. Well, actually, it's 100% lifestyle, because if you're not fat, you're not going to get it, as far as I know. You can be predisposed, but it can be avoided with a healthy lifestyle. She's an alky. I don't know what that means. She do be wonky, but come on, man. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with her. I'm simply noting a phenotypic connection between type 1 diabetes and her specific, the way that she looks. I've seen it before. I've seen the type 1 people, and that's what they look like. I don't know why. I don't know how it happens, but it seems to be something. We need more research into her race, the type 1 race. Type 1 is a mystery. It's an autoimmune disease where the body destroys part of the pancreas that produces insulin. She looks like she would listen to Coldplay. Have you seen Yang try to pose as an everyday man? Hillbillies, right wing equals dumb. Thinking is for leftists. A true man of culture listens to, I don't know what Drain Gang is. There's nothing wrong with phenotypic irregularities. Okay. What do we have next? I see Ottawa Citizen. That's the cannabis thing again. We already covered that. Then somebody has this quote. Wait, so white supremacists stormed the Capitol to overthrow the white supremacist government, but were stopped by the white supremacist police force and are now being tracked down by the white supremacist FBI? And this is not convincing at all. This is the kind of right-wing take that people think is like, whoa, very insightful. You totally destroyed the left, man, because, you know, they thought they were very smart, but actually they're dumb, because how could two opposing sides both be white supremacists? Well, how can Coca-Cola and Pepsi both be capitalist companies and like be competitors in a market? So this is the kind of dumb, this are the kind of dumb takes that people are making. Let's see, we already talked about Christopher Stanton, Georgia. We have some memes. This is an interesting one. I might be able to take a look at this. All right, so comparing the two, the BLM riots lasted 7 months, condemned mostly by Republicans, encouraged by media, police force used, 23 people shot dead, 700 officers injured, 150 federal buildings damaged, hundreds of small businesses destroyed, versus the Capitol riot, several hours, condemned by all Democrats and Republicans, encouraged only by fringe political groups. Police force used, 1 person shot dead, 24 officers injured, 1 federal building damaged, no small businesses destroyed. So the interesting thing about this is it shows you that this riot was actually quite violent, right? Because it happened over the course of a few hours on one day versus 7 months. Just think about this for a second. BLM rioted supposedly for 7 months, and they only injured 700 officers, right? So how many days are in 7 months? How many hours and days are in 7 months? Just think about this for a moment. 7 months is about 210 days. Now, let's say it was more, let's say it was less. Doesn't matter. We're talking like 200 days. So if we had a Capitol riot for 200 days, there would be, what's 14 times 200? There would be 2,800 officers injured, right? If I'm counting correctly. 2,800 officers injured, and there would probably be at least 20 people, or no, there would be 200 people shot dead. If we took the Capitol riot, we expanded that over the course of 200 days, we'd see 200 people dead, we'd see 2,800 officers injured. I mean, it would be basically 10 times the magnitude of the BLM riot. So it shows you, and this is what I was saying about BLM, BLM was fake. Like, the people involved were, frankly, mostly harmless people in terms of their agency. They go around destroying small businesses, but they won't fight the cops because they're weak and scared. The Capitol riot people actually were willing to go toe-to-toe with the cops, and we saw that. So if you compare the two, I mean, I like the fact that they were not destroying small businesses, but it's an interesting thing to think about, the whole fakeness on both sides, different narratives to look at. I thought that was an interesting one. Let's see what's going on here. Spend years being a NEET, the world ends anyway, and my poor life decisions have no consequences. Yeah, that is an issue with being a NEET, the kind of apocalypsism that results, that kind of bias. Interesting fact. Okay, you know what? Let's pull this one up because I think this is an interesting point here. So we're looking at the average yearly cases of sexual abuse, Catholic priests 201, public school employees 29,000. We've talked about this before. But this is very interesting because you see the right wing has had to focus on people like Epstein and people like, I don't know, they pick all these names, Ghislaine, Maxwell, and Jeffrey Epstein. And they have to pick out these people. Now, how many children have been abused by Jeffrey Epstein? Well, let's say it was hundreds. Let's say it was thousands. But was it 29,000 per year? Probably not. Probably Jeffrey Epstein on his own was not responsible for the abuse of 29,000 children per year, right? So if it's the case that 29,000 children a year are being abused in the public education system, why don't people care about that? Well, that's because it's a systemic problem and it's not a celebrity problem. So it's interesting to think about the way in which the right wing has to glom onto these conspiracy narratives in order to create a kind of mythic structure that people are capable of attaching like characters and villains, and Trump is the hero and he's fighting the deep state, versus like the actual banality of evil is that we have a systemic problem with abuse in the public school, and nobody gets excited about that because there's not like some billionaire villain to talk about. Don't listen to Drain King. Off topic, do you think psychedelics had a role in the origin of religion? Possibly. Belady is a visionary. Ken isn't white. Pepsi is the official cola of communism. Imagine presenting yourself as white, not knowing who Belady is. What do you think of Descartes? I think, therefore I am. Yeah, well, what do those words even mean? And you're using language, and language is socially constructed, so problem. Big problem. The Billie Eilish song, what are we even talking about? These people are crazy. The contrarian cheekiness of this take, Ken, but as Papa Joe prolifically said, come on, man. Apparently, the adrenochrome conspiracy theory was started by a graduate student who was drawing parallels between the vampiric nature of capital and the ruling elite. How do we solve the public school sex abuse problem? Well, I think people need to pay attention to it first. I think we probably need to write some articles. I think we need a media that cares. And right now, I don't think the media cares, frankly. So I think we need to start caring about it before anything could be done about it. Can we just stop people? Yeah. Can we just stop? Can we just stop them? Can we like physically stand in between them and be like, no, stop? That would be a solution. But in all seriousness, it would probably require that we start caring, and we start analyzing and start asking, like, you know, you could ask a psychologist, okay, or a criminal investigator, like, what leads up to this? How does this happen? You know, what are the signs? How do you prevent it? How do we structure things differently? And I would ask, first question I would ask is, how many of these cases are heterosexual versus homosexual? For the heterosexual cases, those could all be eliminated through same-sex schooling. So male teachers with male students, female teachers with female students. That's the first thing I would say. Now, as far as the homosexual aspect of that, how do you solve that? How do you deal with that? You have to, honestly, we have to start using AI technologies that can screen, well, I can't actually say that. I can't say that we're going to discriminate against anybody, but yeah, I'll just say we need to pay attention. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to get into specifics about how you solve that problem, but there are ways to solve those problems. I don't know what DNP is. 43% of mothers of transsexual children have borderline personality disorder compared to only 6% of mothers with normal children. That's an interesting statistic. I'd like to hold on to that one, maybe in the religion section, the way in which women with psychological problems feed into religious orthodoxy, right? They're mobilizing all these women with borderline personality disorder to have transgender children. Schrodinger's Trump is simultaneously a highly dangerous neo-fascist demagogue conspiring with a foreign power to subvert and crumble American democracy, and a mediocre executive whose machinations were thwarted by the strength and resolve of American democracy and its institutions. Yeah, Schrodinger's Trump. He's both, on the one hand, he's dangerous, on the other hand, he's incompetent. On the one hand, he's the savior, on the other hand, he's the villain. Everyone's projecting things onto him that is simply... The projections have the reality in the minds of the believers. Looking at some of the statistics, $7 trillion on the wars, $12 trillion for bailing out the banks, $2 trillion on the tax cuts for the rich. It would only take $500 million or $500 billion to cancel the student debt. Ben Shapiro, interesting thing about Ben Shapiro went on Red Ice Radio. Maybe I should pull this up. Ben Shapiro, Red Ice Radio. Let's see if I can pull it up for everybody. What? Ben Shapiro went on Red Ice Radio? Yeah. Take a look at this. Ben bashed Jews in Hollywood at length in a white nationalist podcast in 2014. Red Ice TV. Should we watch all 35 minutes of this? Primetime propaganda, the Hollywood story of how the left took over your TV. Ben is a conservative. This is from March 12, 2014. Ben is a conservative political commentator. At the age of 17, he became a nationally syndicated columnist. He's written 5 books, editor at Breitbart, and founder of Truth Revolt. We'll discuss his book, Primetime Propaganda, the true Hollywood story of how the left took over your TV. What is the leftist communist-friendly agenda in Hollywood? Why are conservatives now on the blacklist? Ben explains how big government enabled Hollywood to become the propaganda outlet that it is. We'll then discuss political and social themes repeatedly seen on TV and what the ultimate end goal is by promoting these messages. We'll talk about Christian bashing, constant racist and homophobic labeling, and TV as a weapon used for behavior modification. Later, we get into the genre of gross comedies. Is the left trying to drive Western civilization into the toilet? How do we turn things around? At the end, we discuss the disproportionate amount of Jewish people in positions of power in Hollywood and their liberal bias. So, I'll just play a sample, maybe.
Bertie has already written 5 books, one of which we'll be discussing, Primetime Propaganda.
This is so
I highly
funny.
encourage you to listen to Kevin McDonald's interview with Henrik on Red Ice Radio, if you haven't already, to add another perspective. Welcome, Ben. Thanks for being here.
Okay, Ben, right after this, we'll be talking to Kevin McDonald. This is Ben Shapiro.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I've never seen you on the alternative media circuit before, so we're glad to have you.
Yeah, I used to do a little bit more often, but now that the baby's been born, she's taking up all my time with
Oh, I would come on here more often, but I just had a baby, so,
staying up and being cute and not sleeping.
she's very cute.
So tell us a bit about your background and what inspired you to write Primetime Propaganda, the true Hollywood story of how the left took over your TV.
What a
Well, I mean, the way
great
that it
title.
actually originated is that I was approached by a publisher because I'd written a column discussing
Okay, do
the
we
wise
care?
black-
Do we actually want to listen to this?
Rosenbar, the idea that Hollywood has an impact on how we live and how our society is formed. There can't be any arguing with that.
All right.
This kid watches 40 hours a week of entertainment.
Yeah, so anyway, you guys can look that up yourselves and listen to it, but I find it extremely entertaining. I find it extremely entertaining to think about Ben Shapiro on Red Ice TV in 2014, and he's going on there, and the whole thing is extremely comedic to me, every aspect of it. Q is a false god created by the deep state to create a misleading narrative. My father has full faith in Q. I think someone who is incompetent could also be dangerous. That's true. Thoughts on moon witches? Okay. Throwback. Breaking news. Politics is a grift. Pastel-colored half-Asian girl. Why did we drift apart? Is Ben trans? How did he have a baby? You sound a bit like him. I guess we have to be a bit nasally. We have to both be a little bit nasally. Thumbnail Shapiro with Heimbach in the background. I don't think Heimbach is in the background, actually. I see an Israeli flag. I see a woman. I see what looks like Leonardo DiCaprio, Vladimir Lenin, and some people I don't know. Funny. What's funny about it? It's extremely funny. It's extremely funny for multiple reasons. It's funny that Ben Shapiro went on a program to say, hi, I'm here to sell my book about why... What's the full title? It's such a stupid... Primetime Propaganda, the Hollywood story of how the left took over your TV. And he's going to put that out there, and he's like, I'm going to go on Radio 314. And then they're like, okay, Ben, right after this, we're going to talk to Kevin McDonald. How is that not fun? How is the whole thing not funny? How is it not funny that he was like, okay, I need to sell my book to a bunch of dumb people. I need to sell my book to Kevin McDonald readers. So I'm going to go on and I'm going to talk about how the Hollywood left took over your TV. And then it's also funny, like, these Radio 314, the Red Ice people are like, oh, we're going to interview Ben Shapiro, and like the whole thing from all angles. I don't see how if you're missing the comedy, then you don't get it. It's very surreal. It's 35 minutes. You should probably go listen to it later. It's very surreal. It's a very interesting slice of American cultural history I think everyone should be very aware of. All right, let's read a post on idle chatter. Let's back up a little bit. Idle chatter. So this is from Theophrastus. He says, idle chatter is engaging in prolonged and aimless talk. The idle chatterer is the sort who sits down right beside someone he doesn't know and starts out by speaking in praise of his own wife. He says, oh, my wife is just so great. Let me tell you about my wife. She just made the best apple pie. Then he recounts the dream he had the night before. I had the weirdest dream, man. He sits down beside you, puts his arm around you. I had the weirdest dream. It was crazy. Then he relates the details of what he had for dinner. He had that apple pie. Then as matters progress, he says that people nowadays are much more wicked than they used to be. Oh man, people these days, they're just crazy, man. That wheat is a bargain in the marketplace. Have you heard how cheap the wheat is? You should go get some wheat. That there are a lot of foreigners in town. Man, these foreigners, can't stand them. And that the seedlings have been open since the festival of Dionysus. I don't know what that means. And that if it rains more, the soil will be better. Man, if we could just get some more rain, the soil would be a lot better. He intends to start a farm next year. Yeah, I've been thinking about starting a small business, a little small farm. It's hard to make a living. Man, it's tough these days. It's tough. The Damit Post dedicated the biggest torch at the mysteries. How many pillars are there in Odion? Yesterday I threw up. What day is it today? And that the mysteries are in the month Boedromion and the Apatoria in Payan Epsilon, and the country Dionysia is in Poseidon. I don't know what any of that means. And if you put up with him, he doesn't stop. Men like this, you must flee at top speed if you want to stay unscathed. It's hard to stand people who don't care. So a very interesting passage from Theophrastus. And there's the original Greek that I can't read. It's a very interesting kind of throwback to the ancient Greeks. Theophrastus, when was he writing? Mr. Theophrastus. Mr. Theophrastus, a Greek native of Lesbos, a lesbian. He's got a very nice statue here. He died, apparently he was 83 years old. He was an old guy. The successor to Aristotle in the Peripatetic school. Very cool. Very cool, Theophrastus. Thank you for that little throwback there. appreciate knowing that people are still the same after all these years. Let's see. I don't know what those numbers mean. I doubt she actually said that live with Ben, probably recorded it. Yeah, I see what you're saying, but it's still very funny. That he did, either he like had no clue what he was walking into. You can listen to the whole thing. There's some funny sound bites people should definitely save before it's taken down. Festival of Dionysus was big sex and wine party. Can be like the Greeks were stoic and manly and based. When did I say that? I just said it was a funny little quote. But they were definitely more, stoic and manly than you, Mr. Mark. The other one we have here is a thread on a Jose Manuel Mireles Valverde. So let's look at he has a very long name. Dr. Jose Manuel Mireles Valverde, a doctor in Michoacan when the Caballeros Templarios cartel controlled the state. Look at this guy, he's massive. You've got like your average size Mexicans, and then he's just towering above them. Michoacan had always been involved in drug trade. In the 2010s, this cartel expanded their source to kidnappings of regular people. Dr. Mireles himself was kidnapped. Many members of his family were murdered. He had the means to leave, but he decided to fight back. He organized local people into grupos de autodefensa comunitaria, community self-defense groups. They fought back not just against the cartels, but against corrupt local officials and police who enabled them. Look at the beard and mustache combo. I mean, is this not the... Apparently I can't zoom in for whatever reason. I gotta open the image. Okay. Check out this dude's... This is like the Mexican Santa Claus here. Mexican Santa Claus looking quite... looking quite portly. We've got some native Mexican dresses, and this guy's holding his gun sort of upside down. I don't know why. I always thought that the trigger should be toward the ground and not toward the sky, but okay, maybe it's because he's got the thing around his neck. Maybe that's how it goes. Anyway, because you can't fire it. Like, the point of having it around your neck like that is so that you can quickly point, aim, and fire, but you can't do that if the trigger's facing up. It needs to be facing your hand. So he should rotate the handle on the whole... It's all wrong. Okay, not the best picture. He's got to fix his whatever he's got going on there. Anyway, he told the people there are about 90 of these people. There are now 25,000. The Mexican army tried to force him to disband. They resisted one official recognition. There are still cartels, still problems in the region. Dr. Mireles was imprisoned, but it's good to see no matter how bad things get, some men fight back. So very interesting Dr. Mireles in Mexico. Very, very tall guy. Very interesting situation over there. That's why I support, Mexico should be part of the United States. We need some more of that energy. Very, very interesting people. This is an interesting piece of history as far as the pilgrims. You look at this woman, they have her skull here. Says that Thanksgiving commemorates a harvest celebration of pilgrims and natives in 1621, the year after the landing at Plymouth Rock. What's left out is the alternative was a fall feast with native friends, starvation, cannibalism, death. I got to expand the replies here. So there's an interesting story here about this girl. I'm trying to find the one where they talk about, okay, so Jane, a 14-year-old cannibalized in the fort It's unknown whether Jane was murdered or eaten, but at this same time, the leadership of the colony put a man to death for killing and eating his pregnant wife. Can you believe that? Cannibalizing 14-year-old girls was the founding of America. For eating 14-year-old pregnant women and such was how America was founded. Interesting thing to think about, interesting context. You know, people talk about the genocide of the Native Americans. How about the part where we were eating 14-year-old pregnant women? Did we talk about that very much? That's an interesting one. Okay, here's some interesting political statistics for you about the percentage of people who thought we had a free and fair election. So it goes back from 2004 up until the most recent one. And it's talking about the Democrats versus Republicans and what they think about these different issues. And we're seeing that share of voters who said that the election was free and fair. The Democrats actually believed that the 2004 election between Bush and Cheney, they thought that that election was free and fair more than the Republicans, even though Bush won. The Republicans said that election wasn't fair, and the Democrats said, no, it was fair, which is a very principled, very principled trust in institutions from the Democrats. And then the gap widens with Barack Obama versus John McCain, and it shrinks a little bit with Mitt Romney, and then you get to Trump versus Hillary, and the Democrats don't believe it was fair, and the Republicans do. And then you get to Biden versus Trump. And look at where the Republicans are. They went from a low back in 2008, a low of 52 to a low of 30. You look at the variability, it's still within a range, right? 30% versus 91%. So it is an exceptional election in terms of the difference between the two parties. In terms of the trust in institutions, I think it's interesting to keep the recent history in mind, and we'll save that one. Another interesting historical map here. This was from 1838, and whoops, we're trying to find the. It's looking at the Indian Expulsion Act, and it's looking at the black enslaved population and the Indian reservations, and we're looking at the voting here. So there were 97 votes no. I believe this was in the Congress. 97 votes no, 102 yes, 10 not voting. And the dark shade of the graph represents the northern votes, and the light shade represents the southern votes, and then the shade with dots represents the slave vote. So of the slave vote, it was basically 4 voted no, 16 voted yes. So ultimately, the yeses won out. If you look back, and again, this is back in 1838, and already there's this political divide between the North and the South. You can see it sort of begins in Virginia, where in the South, they're pretty solidly in favor of the yes. They're pretty and solidly in favor of the yes. And then in the North, they're a little bit divided, but they're much more in favor of the no. And so this was a vote. I'm trying to see if I can find the exact language of the vote. So Indian Removal Act votes in Congress. So basically, they were voting, should we remove these Indians from their lands and put them somewhere else? And in the South, they were saying, yes, absolutely. And you look at the exception, by the way, there's some no and not voting, but the exceptions are in like Louisiana for whatever reason, in that Louisiana bayou where there's a lot of French people who are not the Southern Baptists, they're not English descended. So interesting that the Cajuns voted against the Indian Removal Act, but that the South generally voted for it. New Hampshire voted for it, and some of these other parts of New York voted for it. But, you know, it is interesting, the North-South divide. This is before the Civil War, and it wasn't over the issue of blacks or slavery, but it was over this humanitarian issue. Should we remove the Indians? Now, 200 years prior, there were wars, right? And they had wars with the Indians throughout the 19th century. But, you know, it's interesting to think that not only in terms of abolition was the North the more, you could say, anti-racist in today's parlance, but, you know, with regards to this, it's an interesting reminder that the North-South divide was much deeper than slavery. It was much deeper than simply abolitionism. It had to do with a whole number of issues, and that the way that the South viewed Indian removal versus the North, you know, the North was much more in favor of maintaining these communities or allowing them to exist, whereas the South said, let's get them out of here, let's expand, let's imperialize. I've never seen a man with lungs like Kenneth. You must have never had a calculator when you grew up. Why do you say that? Ken naming random people. Isn't Val Verde the fake country from Die Hard 2? When I was a child, I did... Oh, that's not cool. The Iberian... Germano-Iberian Jose with his mestizo. I don't think he's necessarily Germano-Iberian, but okay. Can real high-trained professionals always use their guns upside down? You've never seen the inside of a combat sim. You might have to fact-check me again. He's only 5'7", which is above average. Females are on average 6'1". There wasn't enough food. Do you prefer short or tall women? I would say in the abstract I prefer tall, but, you know, in the practical de facto, that's, you know, sometimes things end up a certain way. Japanese are born with the blade. Mexicans are born with the gun. Whites are born... you stop with this nonsense, Mark. All the same people in the chat. How do you guys just sit here for 2 hours? I don't know how they do it. Never seen a man. How does it happen? I just got back from groceries, but I kept the stream playing. I crossed my eyes and Ken started to look like that guy from Full Metal Alchemist. Which one? The dude with the kid? I don't know who you're talking about. I hope it was one of the cool guys and not one of the creepy guys. I'm 6'1". Beggars can't be choosers. All right. Let's see what else we have, because we might not finish all of these. How long have we been going? It's almost been a 3-hour stream. I might have to end it here, just because it's been 3 hours. Let's see how many likes we got. Let's see what our stats are. We got a peak of around 46. We got 33 likes. We're almost halfway there. I think I'm going to have to cut myself off there, because at this rate, it's going to be another 3 hours to finish all of these. And to really give them the, how would you say, to give them the kind of, you know, what do you say, the due diligence is the word I'm looking for. To give them the due diligence that they deserve, all of these topics. We'll have to leave them for another live stream, but at least they're out of the bookmarks and they're into the... Now they're into the Discord and they're sorted and they're a little more organized than before, and we can read through them. We can recap a lot of these topics, which people are going to be talking about, and we'll go over a lot of these things and we'll retread ground and we'll repeat ourselves. But like Joe Biden said, you know, you just got to, if you want people to believe something, you got to repeat it over and over and over again. Maybe some of you people are too high IQ for that, but I think that's the strategy. I think that's the way we go with this. There's a lot of information, and we're always looking for further organization and discipline, and we're looking to consolidate things, but I think we covered a lot of ground. I'm going to finish this up. I'm sitting here listening to Ken's sweet voice while looking at maps of Austria-Hungary. Classic. The dude with the glasses and I don't know what dude you're talking about. Hughes? That's his name? Okay, I'm going to look up Hughes from Full Metal Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist. Let's see if Hughes shows up. Is Hughes one of the cool guys, or is he one of the weirdo guys? I think he might start off as a cool guy, and then I think he becomes a weirdo over time. Doesn't he have it? Yeah, there's something weird. I haven't seen it. I guess he has like a daughter, and maybe his daughter dies, and he tries to bring her back to life or something. I don't know what's going on with Hughes. But I guess it's not the worst. At least I'm not like a humongulous... How do you even say that? Humunculus? How do you pronounce... Humunculus. It's such a weird term. It sounds like humongous. Humongulus. Do a Sweet Baby Ray's stream. You only get one of those. I'm an 8-foot tall basketball player. Check out Crumb Brothers, Maps of Austria-Hungary, Maps of Us, U.S. demographic voting from back when, due diligence. You know what? There's a lot of internal contradictions. I'm being really called out. So that's the time to end the stream. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Remember, do not take 10 YouTube accounts and like the video because they're just going to all be deleted. That's serious. It's not like sarcasm. Don't do that. Instead, take your time to, if you want to share the video, and the ratio is 1 to 10. So for every 10 people, you get to click on the video link to look at the video. Probability, historically, 1 person will like the video. And so, depends on where you post it, how you post it. If people have Twitter, you can post it on Twitter. If you've got Reddit, if you've got, I don't know what platforms people use. YouTube, go on a YouTube video, post the link. If 10 people see it, there's a like, and then we're that much closer to the goal, and then we do another 3 hours of this, and life goes on. So I will see you next